Hello and welcome to Tectonic Takes. I'm one of your co-hosts, Ivan Ornelas, here with Will Schneider, and we would like to welcome a very special guest, the voice of the San Jose Earthquakes and the Soccer Hour on KMBR, Ted Ramey. How are you doing today, Ted?
What's up, guys? I'm good. How y'all doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. This was a great timed interview coming off a win against Real Salt Lake. So we're doing a little bit better than usual, but it's always great to have the chance to talk to you.
For sure. Yeah. And coming off a win is always good, especially a Wando Wednesday win when the old man puts two in the back of the net. And that's why I always feel like maybe my call up is coming, because I'm only 6 months older than Wando. And I'm like, if he's still out there scoring goals, then there might be some freak way in sports where I can find my way into a game somehow like that. There's like a 43-year-old emergency goalie in the NHL for Carolina found his way into a game. I'm like, there's that slight chance it might still happen.
Oh yeah, here's hoping. We got our fingers crossed. Will, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. No, I just want to let you guys have your little moment there, and I hope we can get Ted on as a super sub. Come in the late 90th minute, get a header in for us. That would be great. And yeah, I'm doing well. I really appreciate you coming on, Ted. I've tried to catch up on getting to know you a little bit, reading about, and you've dabbled everywhere, and obviously we're going to get to know you a little bit more. So I'm really excited.
Sure. Yeah, no, I like it. Any time somebody wants to talk to me, because I've been on the other side of it, is trying to book guests, trying to get guests for my own stuff. So I've always anytime anybody reaches out, I'm like, yes, I know exactly what you were going through, and I will do whatever I can, because I think people don't always realize, like, people see the finished product. They don't realize what goes behind that, and trying to schedule stuff and trying to make, because everybody has their own lives that are going every which way. And then when you can make it all meet together, you're like, yes, thank you. So like, whenever somebody, especially when they want to talk Quakes, I'm like, I'm there. I'm your man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can relate to that as a listener for a long time, listening to sports radio, podcasts, shows on ESPN or whatever, and everything looks so polished and fast-paced and well-rehearsed, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of commitment from a lot of people that are on camera and behind the scenes, and it's an incredible industry, and you get to be a part of it, and your hard work pays off.
At least you hope it does.
Yeah. All right. It's an exciting time. Just a couple games left for the Quakes and 2 to 3 left for the league as a whole. Are you excited for this end of the MLS regular season to unfold?
Yeah, man, I'm excited, and I'm nervous. I don't like the points per game thing that they've implemented, because listen, I don't have any ill will towards Colorado. I just think it's not fair for other teams like Vancouver or RSL, or, you go down the list of other teams that are right there on the brink to potentially get forced out by a team that played significantly less games. I don't have anything against Colorado, but it's like, they haven't played as many games. That doesn't seem fair to me. And I know that there's heavy conversations behind the scenes, I'm sure, that MLS was having with this. And I'm sure that influenced things, but I don't love it. So, I just hope that this works out for the Earthquakes, that they get in. I feel that the win against RSL last night it was necessary, and they took care of business. I think they end now with two very, very good opponents. LAFC has Vela back, which makes them that much more difficult. And then there's the Seattle Sounders. The Earthquakes, aside from that 7-1 loss, usually play pretty tough. We play them to draws or to the last minute of the game. So I'm excited but nervous. And I think that's what you want. I mean, if you like the 7-1 loss, you go back to that game and you tell me that at the end of the year we're going to be fighting for a playoff spot with 2 games left, I'm stoked. So, because for a bit there, when you're losing 3 out of 5 games, it was a 7-1, then 2 draws, then 6-1 and 5-0 defeats. So that was heavy. And to be here, it's pretty dope. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about how you felt about that points system the MLS came out with. But I mean, what would a little side note question instead is, what would you have done with the situation with Colorado in hand?
Oh, I would have tried to fill in games in that final 2-week period, if it had been close to the number of games that the rest of the teams had played, that would have been one thing. And I think Colorado, it's like, even if they'd played a couple more games, they still, I mean, they played 6 less games than the Earthquakes right now. I mean, that's a lot fewer games. And I think the other thing you would just do is that you would say, listen, I'm sorry, we're going to penalize the Rapids for this. And I think even penalize is too strong a term, but it's like, we're not going to hold this against RSL, or we're not going to hold this against the other teams which were scheduled to play them and missed those games. I think the only right move would have been to say sorry to Colorado. I mean, that's how it goes with a pandemic. They didn't do anything wrong. I'm not saying that they did, there were positive tests. That's the era in which we're living. But I kind of think I don't want to say like being let off the hook, because that has like a negative connotation, but I think that they have been given, an easier path than the rest of the teams. And I know that sounds callous, because saying easier when it's associated to the COVID is not, I'm not necessarily, like, I don't know. It's hard. Like, I feel like anything I say negatively about Colorado is like kind of punitive, because you would think that like getting bogged down with the coronavirus is punishment in and of itself. I don't know, man. It's just a crappy situation all around. But I just, I kind of feel that the only way to do it would have been to try and fill in some games for Colorado. But I think ultimately the way that it should have gone was just to tell Colorado, sorry, you've played so many fewer games. But these are all above my pay grade. So
Yeah,
bigger and better minds than mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be really tricky to fill in games at this point, though, because just looking at the Quakes schedule, for example, their last game is Sunday, November 8th against Seattle at CenturyLink Field. And then the following weekend, there are international games being played in the weekend of November 14th and 15th. So at most, they could fill in maybe one more game on the Wednesday, and that's about it. So I think their hand was a little bit forced there. I don't think they wanted to rule out Rapids entirely from contention, although it would have been consistent, because Nashville and FC Dallas, they were penalized by not being allowed to participate in the MLS's back tournament due to COVID situations. So it is what it is at this point. And I mentioned in the last podcast when we were covering the Whitecaps' victory over the Quakes that someone's getting screwed in this scenario depending on how they handle Colorado Rapids. Right now it's looking like it could be Vancouver, despite them beating San Jose Earthquakes and giving themselves a chance to qualify for the playoffs themselves.
Yeah.
And you just you empathize with them on one hand, but on the other hand, as people who are invested in the San Jose Earthquakes, you're kind of like secretly, not so secretly, because this is a podcast, relieved that maybe you're not the one being screwed. But it is really tough. Every point will count from here on out, and we just hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's really all you can do. It's just all so weird, right? I mean, like, this is not how like a season's supposed to end. And like I know that I'm not happy with that decision, but it's just, I mean, nobody was prepared for this at the start of the year. Like, these are all decisions that guys are making on the fly, and it just sucks, like I know that sounds so like obvious, but it does. Like, this is not how anybody wants to be deciding a season. You want to have everybody play 34 games. You want it to come down to the final day of the season to figure everything out. And you say, all right, we can look at our wins and our draws and our goal differential and, go through the tiebreakers and these things, and not have to say, well, we're going to go off points per game, even though they've played significantly less game because it's in the middle of a pandemic. I mean,
yeah.
Right.
And we've seen points per game in other leagues. I think in the lower leagues of England, for example, that it did alter the course of the results of that season. It affected which teams got promoted or relegated. So it does shift things. And there's a reason why that you don't do points per game. And the obvious reason being that leagues try to have a balanced schedule, but unfortunately, soccer in 2020 works a little differently.
Yeah.
So hopefully, whichever teams do make it to the playoffs, that they'll make sure that they give a good account of themselves when they do get to that point, and we don't go thinking, oh wow, this could have been avoided if a few things went differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing that I would be really disappointed in is if you have Vancouver put together the necessary points Whereas if Colorado like wins one and loses one, and you start looking at, well, if you would, extrapolated the records and, it just, you just hate to see somebody get burned in this situation. But, like you love to be able to bicker about soccer as your biggest concern, because like there's a lot of people in this country and worldwide that are being much more impacted by COVID-19, losing family members, losing friends, coworkers, etc. So like I also try to look at it from that angle. It's like, okay, if my biggest gripe right now is Major League Soccer playoff decision making, like I think I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
All right. So before we go on, we want to give a quick thanks to our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, who sponsor all the podcasts here on the Beautiful Game Network. And before we get into the thick of things as well, we just want to take a second and thank all of our supporters of this podcast, whether you're on Patreon or not. But if you do want to become a Patreon member for early and exclusive content and more bonuses, you can go to www.patreon.com/TectonicTakes. And thank you so much for all of your support and for making this podcast possible. So we're now going to move on to a bit of a rapid fire segment. We're just going to have Will ask you a few questions to get to know you, Ted.
Sure.
All right. So you ready? Here we go. All right. First question will be favorite Quakes player currently on the roster.
Wando, of course. Like I said, the fact that he's only 6 months younger than me. Like when I went to Northgate, he was at De La Salle. Like I was aware of his name. People talked about him. He's been around forever. He's just keeps on kicking ass. So yeah, Wando.
All right. And we'll go with your favorite former Quakes player.
Favorite former Quakes player. I can't break either Marvell Wynn or Joe Cannon's heart because they are, they're still part of the Quakes family, obviously. And I work with both of them. So I can't pick either of them. So I'm going to go with a recently departed member to the Quakes in Magnus Ericsson. Dude was, I think he was very underrated by Quakes fans. And I think the metrics kind of bore out that when the ball got to his feet in the attacking third, it went forward. It didn't surprise me that when he left the team that things kind of fell apart for a bit. And he's just a really nice dude. And I thought that like he had great leadership qualities. He was always very nice to me. I got to do an interview with him on the first day that he joined the club, and just super chill and down to earth. And we kind of joked, because the band ABBA is from Sweden, and one of the dudes from the Earthquakes didn't know who that was. One of the young, like really young workers. And like Magnus looked at me, he's like, you know who they are, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, God, how old are we? Like he was kind of joking right off the bat. So I appreciated that. So yeah, but the sad thing is like usually I travel with all these guys and the broadcasters aren't allowed to travel right now. So like, I don't know if I'll ever see Magnus again. Like the last time I saw him was before Minnesota on March 7th. I was walking, beneath the game near where the players get up and stuff. I saw him, did the bro hug, whatever. And then, everything got shut down the next Thursday. And now he's back in Sweden. So it's kind of sad. I hope I will see him at some point in the future, but yeah, it's just, he was a good dude. So since I won't break Marb's or Joe's heart, I'll go with Magnus.
Sweet and sour there.
Yeah, I guess you got to make a trip to Sweden. You got to have that final closure. Must needed. The next one we got for you is the favorite Quakes team.
Favorite Quakes team. I really like. 01 or 03 would be easy takes. I think that the 2017 team, just because that was the last one to get to the playoffs. That was the first one that got to the playoffs with me doing the play-by-play, and they really had a cool thing kind of going on. And it was kind of like the first glimpse we had of how good Jackson Ewell could be, of how versatile Tommy Thompson could be. Wando was still doing his thing. You still had Victor Bernardez on the club. Shea Salinas, of course, always getting it done. He had big goals that year. So yeah, that 2017 team. But it's like picking your favorite kid. It's not very easy to do. And it's like, you can't really come to a right answer. And I don't have a favorite child for the record. But yeah, that 2017 team, I have a lot of fond memories associated with, but I'm hoping that there's going to be some fond memories associated with this team as well.
Yeah. I think we're all hoping that we're going to have some fun memories with this year, especially how this year's been going. Next one would be your favorite Quakes jersey.
Ooh, Probably the 2017 primaries. I thought those were pretty dope. And the ones we're wearing right now have grown on me a lot. I also liked those red secondaries from 2014. Those are pretty sick. But yeah, probably the 2017 primaries with the Chevron. I guess that's what my wife tells me it's called. I don't know. I like that. The way the stitching went or the right. pattern. I guess it's called Chevron. These are like things like that are way above my head in terms of like knowing like fabric patterns and things of that nature. But those were pretty sick, and I was kind of sad to see them go. But those are probably my favorites.
All right, so I see the love for 2017 for you is very special. But let's see, maybe your favorite Quakes moment maybe isn't in 2017. Or is it?
I mean, you can go. I mean, I have to. It's hard for me to separate the fandom because you think about the comeback against the LA Galaxy back in the day. But yeah, I mean, since like my being on the inside and working for the team since 2014, like, yeah, 2017, like that goal against Minnesota United to send us to the playoffs. And then just the entire stadium erupting and literally causing a small earthquake. And yeah, that one's hard to beat. And so that one, you know, I try to think of it in the frame of like, what has it been in terms of my experience versus who I was in 2001 or 2003 or, you know, whatever year you want to associate with great moments having for the Quakes. And that win against Minnesota, that's the one, you know, Arena scoring that goal. And just, of course, Wando was in on the assist. That was pretty dope. So it's hard to top. And yeah, we keep on coming back to this 2017 theme.
Hey, I mean, that's fine. I mean, like you said, it was one of like the most interesting years for the Quakes, like you explained. And I mean, yeah, that goal was, you know, it was crazy. It was electric, right? I mean, yeah. And so since you go to the stadium much more than we do, we got to know what's your favorite thing to eat there, of course.
Ooh, I'm going to disappoint you heavily with this answer. And I'm sure my bosses are gonna be like, what? But I don't think I've ever eaten any of the food there because they have a pregame meal for us for media, which is usually just, you know, like a burrito or pizza or sandwich or something. And that's usually there. And I actually don't really like to eat big before a broadcast. I'm paranoid of getting food poisoning because like there's no commercial breaks, you know, like if something tears you up in soccer, there's no like mid-inning 2-minute break. So I always I eat like very light before a game. I'll maybe eat like half of a sandwich or like one piece of pizza, a couple bites of the burrito if they have that or something like that. But no, like I would go get my wife, but I think she's watching TV that I've usually monopolized with sports watching while I'm doing this. Cause when she's there with the kids and my parents, she'll get the food that's there. So she would probably have a better answer than I would, but yeah, I'm going with the classic. I'm a media member, so whatever they give me for free.
I mean, no one's going to complain about free food, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess since you're not eating any of the food, I mean, and you're worried about getting food poisoning and that kind of stuff. So do you not drink anything carbonated then, right? You assume because you don't want to burp on air, nothing like that. Yeah, you just strictly stick to water probably.
Yeah, water. And I mean, I have coffee in the mornings always. But yeah, I just stick with water. And yeah, I mean, I've never really thought about the carbonated stuff. But yeah, I mean, it just seems like water in that point because like, you know, like soccer broadcasting, it can be very much like you're kind of chilling and you're telling a story, but then things get very loud and very hectic very, very quickly because you can have just kind of a quiet back and forth and then suddenly a counter can break or something can happen and the volume has to go up very quickly and, you know, you put strain on your voice and pretty much everything that I've learned about vocal strain, it's like whenever it's close to it, no caffeine, just water. So I try and stick with that. Occasionally there's like ginger tea. If it's, I'll bring that to me on the road when we go to some of the colder weather locations and usually find some hot water and make some of that because it's anti-inflammatory. And so I'll sip on some ginger tea maybe before a game. But I mean, that's, you know, water with a little bit of, you know, it's water with some slight, I don't know, it's a root or whatever.
Yeah. Some form of tea.
Yeah.
So for those who are wondering what a chevron pattern is, it is essentially a very 90-degree angle separated zigzag pattern.
This sounds right.
Yeah, something like that.
All right. So now that we've established that, we've hit all the important topics, we can talk a little bit about your life growing up. How was the soccer market or scene back when you were a kid? Did you grow up in the Bay Area or elsewhere?
Yeah. So just to like fill you in like full circle, like my dad was a sports broadcaster and still is. He's in his mid 70s now. He's semi-retired. But he did the earthquakes back in the NASL days, back in the
Oh,
70s and in the early 80s before the league folded. And so like I was born in 82. So like for me from like 1982 to 1994, and I'll get you that point of why I referenced that year, like pretty much like my dad would always talk about like the old NASL days. He'd talk about Bestie and Pele and some of the other great names that were associated with world soccer and also came and played in the NASL. And then in 1994, like I paid attention to when there was a big soccer event on TV, but not too much. It was just kind of like it was because my dad worked for Stanford then. He was doing play-by-play for them and he was working for KCBS and he worked for the 49ers and did play-by-play, other odd stuff here and there whenever he was needed for stuff. So it was kind of like whatever my dad was doing, he would take me and my older brother, who's also a sports broadcaster, to his broadcasts, and we kind of learned by osmosis. But in 1994, that was when the World Cup came to the United States and they played games at Stanford. And so my dad, as he was a sports, reporter, as in addition to it, he was saying that, Ted, that part of this was we're hearing they're going to start a new soccer league in the United States. And that's kind of what this is being used as the impetus for, and it's part of the deal. And so when Major League Soccer started up again in 1996, he did the Clash on TV. So he did their games and he did them 96, 97, 98, 99. And then I think after 99, he went over to the WUSA for the Women's League because they wanted him to do the San Jose Cyber Rays. That was after the success of the Women's World Cup in 1999. So like I was all in on American soccer. And when there was big stuff on TV, my dad was usually intrigued by it as well because he had the soccer background. So I've like, until I was like 12, it was pretty much my dad talking about how cool the NASL was back in the day and what a shame it was that it folded. And then when Major League Soccer came back, I kind of got in on that, and was in on the earthquake or the Clash then because my dad was doing the games and we would go to the games. I was at the first MLS game ever because that game was nationally televised on ESPN. So my dad had the day off and he was with me and my brother in the stands at Spartan Stadium. So we went and took that in, and then I would go to other broadcasts with him and hang out in the press box, and same story with the WUSA. So like trying to describe like the soccer scene in the Bay Area in the, when I was like coming of age as a sports fan, which is like, you're like 8 and 10 years old. It's like, there wasn't a whole lot. Like you would read about some of the stuff that was going on in Europe in the paper sometimes, but like this was before the EPL had come over to the airwaves here, and you would get kind of occasionally some big international games and you could turn on some of the Spanish speaking stations and catch some of their stuff, but it wasn't a huge part of the conversation other than like I said, these stories that my dad would tell me of, the NASL before it was really around, or before I was around, I should say. So when things got rolling in 1994, and then my dad started working for the then Clash at that point, like then it became a much bigger part of my life once again, and it never really left. So it was very, very different. It's not like it is today, and it's super cool what it is today. Like and I'm actually like I wish my parents had been more like kind of those crazy parents who had like told me what sport to play, because they like ended up being like fast, like, and I was a slow ass kid, and then somehow I ended up being fast and ran track. And I was like fast-ish. I wasn't like, I was good enough to run high school track. I wasn't going anywhere after that. And afterwards I was like, why didn't you guys make me play soccer? I could have played fullback. I maybe could have gone and played at like a junior college. Like, I don't know, Ted, you wanted to run track. That was your thing. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I wish you guys had been crazy and made me be like, go be a fullback, Ted. You would have had a longer career, but it is what it is.
Right. It's night and day difference. Like when I think of soccer in like the 90s and 80s, I think, well, it was definitely like a metamorphosis of sorts, particularly from the USA perspective. and how, looking at old videos and matches from the 1994 World Cup, it's one of the few instances in my life, along with other things in general that happened to the 90s, like Michael Jordan's, like, oh, I wish I was born in a different decade, because that seems so exciting and incredible. I know like people from all over the world were shocked that the USA could produce such an incredible World Cup as
Yeah.
hosts. And even a few years later in 1996, San Jose being part of that first ever MLS game, a sold out Spartan Stadium for that match. And it's just incredible what was going on back then. And like now, we kind of take it for granted because Premier League is this thing that it is now, whereas it didn't exist until 1992. And now, along with the Premier League, we have so many other leagues available to us through TV and streaming platforms and all these things. So it's an incredible transformation and evolution that's occurred these last 30 years.
No, dude, it's wild. Like it's so much different. And like you bring up like the change of the official Premier League, what it is now. It's like the big soccer stories that you would hear about, like had to do with like hooliganism. Like you would hear about Hillsborough, and you could hear about some of the huge riots that took place in Latin and South America. And like there was this, you would hear stories like that as opposed to hearing about the great things that were going on otherwise in world soccer. So, like for me, like is like Hillsborough, you hear that story when you're like an 8 and 9 year old kid, you're like, what the hell? Like that's like, you can't even wrap your head around it. It's a tragedy, but it's just like, that was like, you would hear those types of stories, sometimes like negative connotations. But yeah, like you said, like the 1994 World Cup was, incredible. And dude, like, that's why I think the 2026 World Cup, that's going to be like the greatest show on earth for 50 years. Like they're going to, like the idea of United States and Mexico and Canada all getting together on something has me just like that's, like, it's going to be amazing. Like assuming we're not all dead from the coronavirus, it's going to be amazing. Like I'm already buzzing off how cool that could be.
Right. I'm kind of looking ahead a few years, and I was thinking like not only that, but like 2023 with the Women's World Cup, with USA going for the three-peat, and it's going to be hosted in Australia and New Zealand. It sounds like so exciting right now because that's like a 20-hour flight, and right now it's COVID, so travel's not really happening. So it's sounds like a different world right now, but it's something to look forward to, that 2026 World Cup for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of covered it with your amazing background with the involvement in soccer. The next couple questions we had for you, I mean, it's crazy that your dad was involved in this, and you kind of just been with him the whole way. And so the next kind of question we had for you was, how did you get your start with the affiliation with the soccer team?
So I had been working at KMBR, and I had done like stringer work for AP and ESPN radio before that. And I had done like small amounts, like play-by-play and stuff back in like high school. Like people would ask me to be like, hey, can you voice stuff? And can you do, like stuff for the soccer team? And I knew how to do it because I'd been around my dad and stuff. And I'd done like some slight stuff in the past with play-by-play, and had been doing sports talk, and had been doing sports updates, and been doing, just as much stuff as you can in the sports world. You look for opportunities. And at that point I was filling in as a host on KMBR, and I was doing stuff on the Bone, and been doing stuff on Niners pregame occasionally, and Warriors pre and post game. And the Quakes were making a switch, and they reached out to me and they said, was this something that you would be interested in? And I said yes, for sure, because trying to like keep it cool while like them not seeing my head exploding. And so they had me come out and do a tryout, and I think they had some other people do some tryouts as well, and mine was the tape that they liked, and they brought me on, and it's been an incredible relationship ever since. Working for the Quakes. And like, I'm not just saying this as like a dude who's like, now I'm going to talk well about the company I work for.
Yeah,
like,
right.
it's awesome. Like I tell people, like, from me being a dude who was good enough at sports to play in high school, and then like that's where it ended. Like doing play-by-play, in my opinion, is like, it's the closest you can get to actually like being in the game. Because for me, like, that's I'm performing. Like I have prepared for that moment. I have studied. I have done many of the things on like the other side of the spectrum. Like athletes prepare and they study and they watch film and they lift weights and they do all these things that, they train for the moment. And there's an aspect about play by play that's the same way. And you're in on every play and you want to describe it and you want to make sure that people have feel what's going on and you have this opportunity to perform, albeit in a totally different way. There's no, like, it's not physical exertion other than like my throat gets a little tired at the end of 2 hours of broadcasting, but like you do, like it's performance. Like I want to make sure that like I can walk away at the end and be like, I feel good about that. Like I'm glad that people look at this or listen to it and say like, that was fun. And that I enjoyed listening to it. So, it is really, really fun to do. And like, it was so cool that they even offered me the opportunity in the first place. And like here we are, that was 2014 and now it's 2020 and, going strong and, just the only thing that can slow us down is a pandemic apparently. So, you just keep on going in that direction. I'm going to turn my fan on real quick. The lights are making it hot in here. One second.
Go for it. Yeah. So Ted Ramey's affiliation with the club started in 2014. And even though during that time, the Quakes, as of now, only have qualified for the playoffs one time in that period, it still has been an exciting time. We've seen players called up for their international teams, playing World Cups, and it's been an interesting period of growth with a lot of good players coming in and out. And also from a league perspective as a whole, seeing the size of the league increase very exponentially, now at 26 clubs, and it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly to watch what the league has grown into and what it's continuing to grow into. Like, I mean, I think the sky's the limit. I've had this line that I've been telling people for a while, that I think that in a not too distant future, soccer and the NBA are probably going to be the kings of sports in the United States. And I think that the 2026 World Cup is going to go a long way in doing that. I also think that the growing popularity of the women's game and the NWSL, I think that's going to continue to push things forward. And I actually think that the 1999 Women's World Cup in the United States had a huge impact on the game here in the country as well, because everybody remembers Brandy Chastain ripping off her shirt and flashing the guns in the 6-pack after scoring the game-winning PK. And it was just like, it was like, that's one of those moments. Like you have all these different moments that have allowed, Major League Soccer that have helped it grow. Cause I think that when people, even if you become a fan of soccer because you watch Messi, like you still want to pay attention to the league then that's in your backyard. It's like like you can be a fan of Alabama football and still want to see what Cal and Stanford are doing, even though the Pac-12 is an entirely different entity ostensibly than, the SEC, because it's all part of the same picture. It's all part of the whole, narrative. And I think that while MLS is still in this growth stage, people, for whatever reason, whether it's been a Women's World Cup, whether it's been a different World Cup, whether it's been Champions League, whether it's been the EPL, having Major League Soccer here at the same time concurrently with all this huge growth in world soccer and the internet, and everybody's been able to engage more with what's happening worldwide, it helps Major League Soccer in the growth. Like I had a dude on the Soccer Hour I guess that was like a year and a half ago, young English dude. And he was talking about how his friends were enthralled by Major League Soccer because he was like, dude, you're watching Watford and Burnley. He's like, you watch that and then you watch, at that point it was right. I guess this was early 2018 that I think about it. He's like, you watch that with El Trafico. He's like, and you have Zlatan Ibrahimovic scoring bangers from 45 yards out against LAFC. And he's like, that game was way more entertaining than most of what the EPL was that weekend. So he was talking about how like the American, like there's like, the American soccer snobs like, oh, Major League Soccer. No, I don't want to watch that. But he was saying like, I mean, it's like you that's entertaining. And like, I think that's where Major League Soccer is right now. Like, I'm not going to say it's on par with EPL or La Liga because you just look at the money involved with the players. You do the simple arithmetic. It's not there yet. But I think that as you have more of the melting pot in the United States, more people who have a varied background, who have families that come from other parts of the world, they have more of that soccer background. I'll get into this more because I know you guys wanted to ask about Damon Bruce, but I think that those of us who are younger than 40, who grew up with more of soccer in the mainstream, who had Major League Soccer, who had the United States men's national team come to prominence, I should say, who had the EPL on TV, who had more world football, who had social media and the dissemination of content. It's allowed everybody to kind of be more aware of the world game, and thusly they are more aware of what's been happening with Major League Soccer. And it's one hand kind of feeds the other, and it's really cool to watch where it is right now, and then again where it's trending in the next decade. Because you think about where we were in 2010 and where we are now in 2020, what is this going to be like in 2030? Like that's where I'm just like, holy crap, because I don't think this train is slowing down.
I don't think so at all. And there's so many different tracks that keep expanding the ways of movement of the sport. And I'm just excited to be a part of it through this podcast and through every other way that I'm involved in the community. So it's great.
For sure. Like that's the thing is like once, like you guys know, like once you're in and it like becomes like a responsibility, you get like that much more deeply invested in it. And it's also fun. Like you can definitely chase yourself. You force yourself down that rabbit hole, but it's fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right. So then since you've been around the club for so long as a fan and as a part of the media, how do you feel about San Jose Earthquakes' growth and direction?
I feel good about it. I mean, that's not to say there haven't definitely been some speed bumps in the road like 2018. I think that the club is trending in a direction that I think is the right way. It's not been a linear as the crow flies straight ride. It's been kind of trying to wind and figure out where it's going to go. And, people want to be like, oh, well, look at this, that, and look at what this club is doing. And I'm like, yeah, but this is like, it's hard to gauge. Like, look at what the Galaxy are going through right now. Like the Galaxy are historically the franchise that has set the tone for Major League Soccer. And they are, in a death spiral. Like they can't do anything right now. And it's like, there's part of me, which is like, cause I'm a Quake, but at the same time, I'm like, it's really not good. It's everything to me is also more fun when the Galaxy are at the top of their game, when they are more, as part of the conversation. That just makes it more entertaining. But yeah, I mean, it's not right now. It's a hard league. And I think that the Earthquakes have been finding their way through it. And I really like what Jesse Fiorinelli has been able to do. I think that 2018 was definitely, it was no good, but 2019, it came down to the last day of the season, which was, if it comes down to the last day of the season to make the playoffs, that's better than it not being that way, having experienced years like 2018. I think there are some things that kind of went against us down the stretch, like Wando getting a red card from the bench against Atlanta. That didn't help us.
That Atlanta game. Don't remind me about that Atlanta game.
Yeah, dude.
I kind of forgot about that till now.
Dude, I remember I like when that happened, I think I said during the broadcast, I think it was Chris Penso was the referee. I was like, has Chris Penso lost his mind? Like, I was like, just like what? Like, that was the first red card Wando ever got. And it was from the bench. Like, come on, you don't do that to the dude. Who's, like, if he's complaining, it's legitimate. So, there definitely been rough spots. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat that, but I think getting Matias Almeida, I think that they're now trying to spend more money and get more impact players and trying to figure out how that money is best spent. And I think things are trending in the right direction. And I hope that this year, aside from here's the deal. Like when we look at those rough losses this year, 7-1, 6-1, and 5-0, like it hasn't just happened to the Quakes. Like LAFC did that to Vancouver. Portland did it to LAFC. RSL, either they blanked somebody 5-0 or they got blanked 5-0. I forget which it was, because there've been so many of these games like this. Like 2020, to try and compare in a normal context is kind of hard to do, especially with the teams in California dealing with the wildfires at that same time, which was definitely impacting training. I think those were probably 4-0, 5-1 type blowouts as opposed to 7-1, so I think that definitely played a factor. So like, you do look at those games and you say like, oh, like obviously it's hard not to react and be like, holy God, what is happening here? But at the same time, it's like, okay, they go out there, they get Matias Almeida, they're bringing in guys like Rios, like Fierro, who they think can be impactful players. And I think that they're starting to make good on that promise. I think that the growth of the academy system and the homegrown players, guys like Cade Cowell, who looks like Alphonso Davies, in San Jose. Like, dude, that guy, by the way, like I always say this, like looking at him when he first joined the team at 15 and now he's 17, I'm just like, dude, I never had a chance. Like he's just walking around like cut from marble and just like, it's such like a different level. And I'm just like, God, man, like he just genetically different. And we watch him. So you see players like that. And, there's these rumors with Barcelona surrounding him, which if the Quakes end up moving him there and making that money and reinvesting in the club, I think that's all. If that's the plan, is to be a selling club and then use that to put more money into the academy system and also get in more quality players, then you like it. You like those things right now. And I think that hopefully the tougher times, 2018 is the one that really stands out, are behind the team and they keep on going forward in this direction. Because I think Matias Almeida was a huge hire and I like where things are going. And then, the other thing I think that plays a factor as well is that the soccer they play under Matias Almeida is attractive. I know people were not fans of Dom Ball, and I have a great deal of respect for Dominic Kinnear, but his job in his mind was to go out there and get points. And he didn't necessarily care about how attractive the soccer was or whether it was, the prettiest brand or whether people wanted to label it an empty bucket. He was just going to go out there and do what he thought was going to get points. And that's what he was doing with the budget at the time. And he was pretty decent at it and has the pedigree to back it up. But I think right now, if people sit down and watch an Earthquakes game like they did in the MLS's back tournament, when they were a little bit more just kind of frantic and flying all over the place, it's toned down a little bit now. But it's still very attractive. People like the brand of soccer. And I think in addition to the player acquisition and building the academy, you want to be able to put something out there on the field that's attractive. You want something that people watch and are entertained by. And I think that that's part of it. And I know that's not as satisfying an answer to be like, oh, that they have spent X millions of dollars on players and done this, but it's like, when you watch the team play, are you entertained? And I think that definitely that is the case right now at the Earthquakes. They're good watch. They're fun and entertaining. So you hope that a year like 2018 is behind us. And the other thing is that Matias Almeida, with his whole take of it being a project, it kind of seems like that's bearing out a little bit. And a lot of people were skeptical of that when they were losing badly earlier this year, but it seems like now Carlos Fierro has found a little bit more of his role with the team. Same with Andy Rios. Same with Cade Cowell. Same with, you had Jacob Akinurich get in there. You've got JT Marcinkowski. He's now taking over the reins as the starter. You see more of the direction and more of, like, not to get too cheesy, but when you pour cement, lay the foundation, as it were, like, doesn't have a lot of shape at first. You see what they're trying to do, but it can be messy. And so now, which I guess that's a two-part soccer joke. But it can now it's kind of taking shape. And I feel like it's been up and down, no doubts about that. But now you kind of see more of the idea and you want to see what they can do here and then think about what they can do next year and the year after. And I don't think Matias Almeida plans on going anywhere anytime soon. I know everybody's like, well, he's never lasted anywhere more than 3 years, or maybe it's 4 years, but I think it's 3. And then he moves off. But I think he likes it here in San Jose with his family. And I mean, dude, there's no better place to live in the world than the Bay Area. I mean, there might be places that are as good, but like the Bay Area is incredible. And so I'm sure he looks at this for his family and says like, yeah, this is pretty awesome. So long answer, but I do like the direction where things are headed.
Yeah, I think if you asked me or if anyone was asked this question at 5 or 6 different points of the season, the answers would have all been different. And it's been a roller coaster ride, to say the least. But I think now that we start to see them turn the corner from that horrible spell, that we can see exactly like, okay, this is Matias Almeida's system, why he wants to play this way, why these players are in this team for a reason. and it's definitely a different feeling than Kinnear ball. And with managers and clubs where they play unattractive soccer, like think of Burnley or Stoke City or whoever, that if your goal is to get points, you got to be damn sure you get points as often as possible, because that's all you can hang your hat on. You can't say, oh yeah, come to the stadium, we're going to play great passing soccer or football over there, but that goes out the window. You definitely put the pressure to get the points, and there's going to be points in any club's history where they're going to be hard to come by, and that's where things went south for Kinnear, and that's where things looked like they were going south for Almeida. But now we're in a fighting chance for the playoffs, and you can't ask for much more.
Yeah, I think with Kinnear though, is like people forget that those teams that he won with in Houston, which were essentially Earthquakes teams, is like they played really attractive soccer. Like Dom, when he has that level of talent, he's able to put it together. And I was tweeting about this earlier today in light of the firing of GBS in LA. At the end of that 2018 season, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, like no slouch, right? Like he said, I think this team should hire Dom Kinnear as the coach. And why the LA Galaxy didn't listen to him, I will never understand. It's like, now who's the head coach again of the Galaxy? Dom Kinnear. What have they done over the last 2 years? Nothing. Like what? Zlatan Ibrahimovic wanted Dom to be the head coach. If Zlatan says Dom should be the head coach, that's what you do. And instead, they brought in GBS. But listen, I'm sure he's a nice person. I did not like what he was doing with that Galaxy team. Like they were so disorganized, and they have some talent out there. I don't know what's going on with Chicharito. That dude, good. I have no idea why that hasn't worked in the slightest. But like Pavone, Leggett, Corona, like those are good players. Bingham's a good player. Yeah, Sasha Kleshchen, an MLS veteran who can go out there and get things done. They have a lot of good players, and I don't know why it's not better. And it was just so disorganized. It was like, okay, get it to Leggett or Pavone, and then get it to Chicharito. Okay, nothing there. Try that again. Try that. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, what if they had put Dom in charge of these teams after 2018? I think Zlatan Ibrahimovic might even still be there. I don't know. It's hard. And again, there's tons of stuff that goes on, and I don't want to pile on Guillermo Barros Schelotto because he's a smart guy, well-respected, obviously, but I just found myself miffed. And I'm a Zlatan guy, by the way. Like I find all of it is just hilarious. Like I find him to be like hilarious, entertaining. And if you look at the stuff that he's done behind the scenes for like charities and helping clubs, like just a good dude. And I just found it amazing. I was like, he just told you to hire Dom and you go and hire somebody else. Like, what are you doing? I found it stunning. But yeah, I mean, I understood the criticisms of Dom Ball. Like it was the teams that he had here in San Jose were not the most talented. He had him in the chance to make the playoffs the last day of the season in 2015. And then in 2016, it was a lot of injuries and it was just no good. And then in 2017, I think the team was in second or third place, but he was a different coach than what Jesse Fiorinelli wanted. And that's how it goes in sports. When a new GM comes in, you might not be the guy. And we see that in the NFL most definitely all the time. So, Jesse wanted to make a change, and that's what they did. And Leach led him to the playoffs, similar points per game average. And that was that season. But yeah, again, if Zlatan says hire Dom, like you should probably hire the guy. And then now it's just a mess, and Dom's in charge again.
Yeah, I think Zlatan is a very fascinating mercurial personality. How many players can get away with, well, a lot of the things he said, but one that sticks out to me is he made a YouTube video once where he was asked to name his all-time starting 11 of players he's played with. He puts himself in it, of course. He says the best for last. And it's like, of course, that's a very Zlatan thing to do. But it's almost like, to tie it back to something I'm sure everyone watched during this pandemic, The Last Dance. Michael Jordan, has his preferences for his coaches, and a big reason for that dynasty ending was Phil Jackson not being renewed regardless of the result. And congratulations, you pissed off your star player. Yeah. And now when he's gone, where are you? And Zlatan's gone. And now they have the MLS and Christian Benteke, who is not getting it done. And I'm sorry to say that about Javier Hernandez. Along with San Jose Earthquakes, I'm a Manchester United and a Chivas de Guadalajara fan. So I've seen Javier Hernandez play incredibly well. And right now, he's just like, a shadow of his former self. I don't know what's going on, and I'm hoping, as much as I don't want the Galaxy to succeed, because that usually means bad things for the San Jose Earthquakes, I'm hoping he turns it around and he can remind everyone why he's a good player for club and country at his best.
It's hard, and because he's not, he's kind of got that Wando sense about him where he's a poacher. Like, you don't look at him to create, but it's like Leggett is very good, Pavone is very good, and it's like, why aren't they creating things for him to respond to? It was very weird watching that team, man. Like, it was so disconnected. And I also felt bad for David Bingham, who I know that he's a polarizing guy in Earthquakes lore, and I always got along with him very well. He was always nice to me. And he had a good run of form there with Dom Canary. He was on the national team, made it, got called up, was looking pretty good. And I like the lack of defensive organization was hurting that team and put him in a lot of bad spots. And it just, that's the thing about pro sports, man. Like, there's like, for me, I'm sitting here blaming, GBS or saying, why didn't they hire Dom and all these things? But like, there's a million things that happen behind the scenes that we don't even get sniffs of, like there's only, like, always people have come to me, they're like, so Ted, what's going on with X, Y, and Z with the Earthquakes or the Sharks? And I'm like, I don't know. They tend not to tell the guy with the loudest voice in the room all the darkest and deepest secrets, because it's just like, they keep these things close. They play it tight. They don't tell the world. And that, dude, look at the 49ers, like John Lynch, when he signed on with them, he was so concerned about the leaks there that he said, if anybody finds out I'm in the running for this, I'm not going to take this job. So like leaks and things that get out, like nobody knew, like, and that was weird because everybody had heard about everything they thought, and it was completely out of the blue and had been going on for a while. Like, that's how sports are. Like, everybody thinks they know everything until they realize, oh, I didn't know anything at all. And that's including me as well. And I'm someone who's relatively on the inside. Like, there's only so much that you're privy to. And then there's those talks among the owners and the executives that are just there. And it's an interesting dynamic. And, that stuff like that. And I'm sure with the players and the coaches has gone on that we'll never hear about. And it's just like, the one thing I don't like is how people like Chicharito's earned his spot. Like, he's done what he's done for the Mexican national team for a reason. There's no reason to think of him as a guy who's quote unquote dogging it, like he's only, I think, 32 years old. I think he's still got a lot of life left in those legs. And I don't like people, I don't like that we're all put in this position to kind of speak ill of the guy, because for me, if the United States are team number one, Mexico on the national stage is team number two, because I grew up in the Bay Area. It's, there's a huge Mexican community here. They're also geographically right next to us. That's like when people got mad at Landon Donovan, I was like, but like they're our ally. I understand that when we play them, they are the enemy, but otherwise, like, I feel like we have so many Mexican Americans everywhere. It's like, how am I supposed to look at my friends who are of Mexican descent and not want to be along with them and root on, their heritage and their background? Like, I felt like most of them, when the United States were playing in games that didn't involve Mexico, were also rooting for the United States. Like, it's this weird dynamic. And I don't like kind of like talking Chicharito, because he's an incredible player. He's the all-time scorer for Mexico. He's awesome. But it wasn't working. Like, you watch that team and you would be like, what on earth am I looking at? So, it's like I said, I know that the Galaxy being good is not what we want as Quakes fans, but it's also like, I feel like things are more, I want there to be a situation again where the Earthquakes and the Galaxy are going head to head in big games, just like it is with the 49ers and the Seahawks again now, as it was, when Harbaugh was there, just as you want it to be with the Giants and Dodgers. I mean, you want the Sharks and the Knights in these games. Like, you want these hated rivals to go at each other because you get classic moments. And so, like, hopefully maybe next year you get that. Yeah. I mean,
we'll find other teams to hate if it's not the Galaxy, but I get your point. You want to say anything? Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, I don't know what to say after all that. I mean, you guys broke it down perfectly. Next thing you know, we're gonna have Chicharito on the Quakes, and everything's gonna be just fine. But I mean, I guess kind of moving on from away from Chicharito, and we just kind of wanted to get to know what your pregame rituals are as you prepare for a broadcast for KNBR.
If it's a home game, I'm usually up early because I'm stoked. I'm out of my mind. And then I take that up to the next level by slamming coffee. And it's like leading up to the game, like earlier in the week, I watch 2 or 3 previous games, especially if they're available on ESPN Plus or if they're on Fox Sports 1, I'll try and record it. I do all my prep work. I use mailing labels as my notes for kind of my broadcast board where I'll have the formation of the team in front of me. I set that up when the lineup comes out. But the day of, after I've done all that prep work, I'll drink my coffee after getting up early. And I mean like 5 a.m. And you can go back, you'll see like social media posts I've made at like 5:30. And it's like just me like up drinking coffee, like, oh, Quakes. And I do that. I'll usually work out and I'll kind of get out some flashcards and bust over some data and some numbers to kind of go over things again. Nothing too crazy, just kind of hanging out. And if I have time, I'll watch some of the other games that are going on. Like the best for me is when the EPL is on early, because then I can drink coffee and watch some of the EPL games and get ready. And then I'm usually like right now, I don't get to the stadium super early just because there's no fans there. There's no slowdown getting in. But when it's a normal game, I'm there about 4 hours before kickoff. Right now, I'm there about 2 hours before kickoff, but I get there 4 hours before and I set up and test anything, because my opinion is that if I set up everything and I have an opportunity to fix it, I should try. Like if that means I have to go to Fry's or some other electronic store, something because of, wire, cable, piece, whatever, I give myself the opportunity to fix it because I engineer my own broadcasts. So that's one of the reasons I get there so early, is to make sure everything works. And then sometimes I do some stuff with season ticket holders before the games. We've done some speaking engagements with Chris Leach, with Jesse Fiorinelli, with some of the kids in the academy system. And those are for, like I said, season ticket holders and people that are involved with the Earthquakes, things of that nature. Sometimes they have me kind of give people a little walk around the press box and the TV booth and the radio booth and show them what goes on during the broadcasts and things of that nature. But there's no like hardcore ritual. I warm up my voice. I do little like vocal exercises. You don't want to hear me do them, but I do like little things of trying to get the voice warmed up. But yeah, nothing too crazy. Like I prepare myself pretty well during the week. And the thing about that is that you do all this prep, you have all these notes and you have all these cool facts, and rarely does it ever work out to where the dynamic of the game actually leads you into that discussion. So like if you have 100% of your information, you'll be lucky if you're able to work in 15% of it. And it's an incredible day if you can work in 20% of it. Mostly it's between 5 and 10% of the notes and facts and little random stuff that you have that you're able to work in, because so much of it in radio is identifying who has the ball, what they're doing, what time of the game it is, and what the score is. Like you just, it's like TV, you can sit back, and if they're just kind of, moving it around in the middle third, you can tell a story about a player a little bit more. But if I do that while somebody's listening on the radio, they're going to be like screaming in their car, like, Ted, what's happening? What's the score? So like I try to do that and not rely as much on the stories and the other thing. But yeah, I mean, like my game days are pretty chill, just kind of do everything it takes to make sure the broadcast goes off without a hitch. It's like I said, coffee, watch some EPL, go over some flashcards, work out, get ready and go to the game and just kind of get ready. I don't like the look of people in a hurry. Like when I'm at the airport, I'm one of those people who was like, get to the airport super early. Just because I see people in a hurry at the airport and I'm like, I don't want to look like that.
It raises your blood pressure.
Yeah. Like they look bad. Like they're just like people like sprinting for planes and like carrying their luggage and like spilling coffee and dropping stuff. Like even if it's an airport or like anything else, I'm like, I don't want to look like that. I just want to show up early, take care of my things and just chill until the game gets ready to go, because it's just, again, it's everything's so much more chill that way. Like just get there, set it up, make sure we're all good. Once we're all good, I can just do my thing and get ready for the start of the game.
All right. So, and you covered a lot of how you prepare yourself for the game. So I'll now ask you how you practice saying new names on the broadcast, because especially in MLS, which features players from all over the world, it can be pretty tricky sometimes. And you're thinking, oh no, this isn't some Scrabble board. This is a name. So like, how do I say it?
the thing that you want to do is go listen to a broadcast. The problem is
Right.
you don't get to pick the broadcast that you listen to, because sometimes it'll be a visiting or the other team's broadcast. And if they're not talking about their own players, they'll get a pronunciation wrong. Or you hear something, you're like, I don't know that that's how that's pronounced. So usually you can find a home broadcast and figure it out that way. Other times, I have called other broadcasters on other teams and we'll have talked about it. Some of the broadcasters in the league I know now pretty decently, like Richard Fleming with Colorado. I consider him a friend now. Brian Dunseth with RSL. I consider him a friend. So like if there's anything going on or a question I have, I can text them or ask them, call them real quick and have those natures. But also we're lucky here in the Bay Area because we are so used to names of so many different backgrounds, particularly Spanish speaking backgrounds. So like when you see some of these names and you see some of the things that might throw off somebody who's not from a Spanish speaking community, I think we have a little bit of a leg up here. So that's nice that like you don't get thrown off by Enyes or double L's, and you have met friends from Brazil and things of that nature. So you have a decent understanding of how it's supposed to be said. So yeah, I mean, there's a number of different ways you can do it. And then, you know, you can say it once or twice. And like, the thing is like sometimes your brain just screws up and you like have figured out how to say it, because there are some tricky names. You figure out how to say it, you go to say it in the game. And like one time out of like the 30 times you say it in the game, it just comes out completely wrong. And you're like, what the hell, man? Like where did that come from? But you know, just find out a way to get the pronunciation and assume you do it right. And even if you're doing it wrong, just say it confidently, because it's better to say it wrong confidently than to say it. It's like, if I was Obafemi Martins, if I said it confidently, it would be like, you know, it's Obafemi Martins, obviously, but say it confidently wrong. It sounds better than saying it till you make it. Yeah, exactly. Like do it, like make it sound like you know what you're doing. Because I've heard in broadcast, not in soccer, but just any sports, you'll hear a guy kind of stumble over a name. And having been there before, just because sometimes your brain just farts or whatever, you would be like, okay, just say it with confidence. It'll sound better that way. And even if you get it wrong, somebody might tell you, but you know, like you just deal with it. But yeah, I try to make sure that we know. And then also, usually 2020 is totally different, but usually the visiting broadcasters there as well before the game. So if you're still not clear on something, you can ask them and try and get it cleared up. So there's a number of ways to do so. But still, clearly, if you listen to some broadcasts, and I'm sure, like I said, I've screwed up, and then other broadcasters around the league, you hear them say something, you're like, that's not how it's pronounced. Like, so, you know, it happens to the best of them and to me as well. So I try not to crush guys when they do it.
Yeah, I think that's the advice I give to my students. You've taught communication studies classes at San Francisco State University, and I'm doing so now at Community College in San Diego. And everyone gets nervous when they have to do public speaking sometimes. So I just tell them, fake it till you make it. Like, obviously, do your best to prepare beforehand your information. You don't want to give people wrong information. But when it comes to like names and words, pronunciations, sometimes that's the best you can do. But also, I know that my answer for learning how to say names of certain players that would be otherwise difficult, playing FIFA. I think that's my way out of jam sometimes.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, go ahead, Will.
Sorry, no, I know. I didn't know if we were still going to be on the FIFA, but yeah, no, I mean, I definitely would use FIFA as a great resource as well. But
Yeah.
we're talking about, you know, having mistakes or possible mistakes with names. We're kind of curious if you ever had like a mistake on the air that you really kind of caught yourself that you're like, wow, that was not a.
When I was doing updates for Damon Bruce, I somehow said my name wrong. I'm serious. Yeah. Like, no. And even like Damon like came in like on air, was like, did you use Brits pronounce your name? I was like, yeah, I did. And like, there's like things like that. Like you just want like Joe Hughes, who worked with me at KMBR as well. And now he's at KCBS, same as me. We like joke about the mistakes. Cause like like, it's just weird. Like your brain just screws up sometimes. And you're like, how many times in my life have I said, hi, I'm Ted Ramey. I'm Ted Ramey. And I don't even know what I said, how I pronounced my name in that instance. But I just screwed it up. And like, that's the one that's like, dude, you got your name wrong. Like, what the hell, man? So yeah, that's probably the one that I would look at the most. Otherwise, no glaring mistakes. Well, there was the one time that I did drop an S-bomb on air, but we had the dump button. It was when Adrian Peterson had been, I think that was in the story broke that he had abused one of his children. And I just said like, that's some messed up like that. Just because like that was like my natural reaction to it. And then I saw the guys at the booth like looking at me like, I was like, oh, hit the dump button, which there's a 7-second delay. But like that was just my natural reaction. And like that's what they want in radio. They're like, we want to make it feel like there's just a microphone that's dropped into the room to get your candid thoughts. And like, you got my candid thought. Like I thought that was some messed up S. I straight up said that on the air. So that wasn't necessarily a mistake other than the fact that I could have gotten the station fined. But you know, that's just more of a humorous tale as opposed to me literally not being able to pronounce my own name. So that probably takes the cake.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think anyone that would mess up their name on the air would be pretty up there on anytime messing up on broadcasting.
Oh yeah. So now that we went from one end of the spectrum, we'll go to the other. What was your favorite call for the San Jose Earthquakes?
Like the favorite one that I did?
Yeah, that you've done.
Oh, it's a good question.
Has to be 2017, right?
Well,
I mean, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I would immediately go to that call of Shea Salinas' goal in the Classico, but also being able to call Wando's all-time goal scoring record. That was pretty dope too. You know, that was pretty awesome. You know, because that one got played on you know, some radio stations, and they played it with the highlight on, I think on like Sports Center and then like Fox Sports 1.
Oh, nice.
So that was cool. And then also my call for Shea this year for scoring the game winner against Vancouver in the MLS is Back tournament. They used that on Fox Sports 1 broadcast the next week to kind of come into the intro of the game. So I was pretty proud of that one. I didn't see this one in the notes. This is a tough question. Yeah, I got to go with the Wando just because like that's history and you know it's coming. You don't want to screw that one up, but I felt like I got it right. So
there you go.
That's probably my favorite call for the Quakes. That was cool. And just Wando's a badass, you know. So it was fun to be a part of that. Have a minuscule part of his history and Major League Soccer history.
Right. No, I mean, definitely. And I kind of wanted to, I mean, question was on notes, but since you're talking about this and you're talking about hearing yourself, you know, these calls, does it kind of like, you know, when you kind of hear a broadcast call and it's something great and something crazy, you kind of get the chills, you know, you kind of get that feeling. You're like, oh, it just happened. You know, do you kind of get that feeling, you know, when you hear yourself after making a great call like that or something?
Yeah. I mean, I always, for like 99% of what I do, and I was relieved to hear that Kevin Harlan, you know him from TNT and Westwood One, like he has the same reaction as me, and that we hate 99.999% of everything we do. And that like that's just always how it is. Like I always like, even when I think I have a good call in the moment, I'll go and listen to it and I'm like, oh, that's crap. And I know I'm way too harsh on myself because I've had people who I don't just think were BSing me come and be like, hey, dude, I thought that was a really good call. And like because I know I'm way too harsh on myself. But like there have been times like when you remove yourself, like when they went back and played my goal call for Shea Salinas' goal in the Classico. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like I didn't like it at first, but then later I saw it again. I was like, you know what? That's good. That's good. I like it. That works overall. Like I was pleased with that. Same thing for Wando. Same thing for, you know, there's been some other goals and some other moments and some other plays that have come in there, but like, usually in the immediate aftermath, I listen to my broadcasts sometimes on the way home and I'll just be like, God, like, what are you doing, Ted? You should just quit now. And I know it's crazy. And like my dad laughs at me because he's, you know, a sports broadcaster as well. So he gets it. You know, and he's always like, Ted, I would tell you. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I just, you know, like there's just that thing where you're just, I don't know, like you never get used to hearing yourself as much as you listen to yourself. Like it just always, you have a biased take on yourself. And like, I also don't want to lose that. I don't want to be like, oh, that was good. Like I never want to be like in love with my call in the immediacy. I always want to strive to be better. Like I take it very seriously to make it good and entertaining and fun. Cause and I alluded to this earlier, like I'm performing, but like there's an aspect of it because it's broadcasting, it's performance art. And I'm not trying to like self-aggrandize myself or make it sound like bigger than what it is. Cause like I'm screaming at players on a field, passing and shooting and doing the normal things. But it's like, you want it to like, you arm yourself with these tools of knowing their names and knowing their numbers and describing what they do. and like I've heard so many guys in broadcasting, and it's very subjective, obviously, where I hear them and I'm like, what, regardless of history, I'm just like, I'm not in love with what they're doing. And so like when I'm making a call, I want to make sure that people listen to it are enthralled and they having a visceral emotional reaction. Because in the moment, I'm always having that reaction. I'm trying other than my dad, who's obviously the biggest influence you could ever possibly have. My favorite broadcaster is the dude who just retired from the NHL in Doc Emmerich. He's a very polarizing broadcaster. Some people don't like him, but I think he's great because he's so emotionally involved and you're excited with the ups and the downs and the ebbs and the flows. And I get that with Kevin Harlan as well. I'm a big fan of both Randy Hahn and Dan Rusanowski. Obviously, in the Bay Area, we're spoiled. There's so many good broadcasters everywhere. And they're just, and like a lot of them are friends with my dad, so I don't want to leave anybody out. But we have great broadcasters here and all of them are amazing. That's what happens in a major market like this. You get good broadcasters, but like I've heard broadcasters in other big markets where I've been like, this isn't doing anything for me. Like the guy sounds bored while he's doing the broadcast. Like I never want to sound like somebody who's like not emotionally involved. I want people to listen to it and be like, yeah, Ted's emotionally involved. Even if I hate the call myself, I always know that in the moment I was emotionally involved. My critique of it is different than what the actual projection of the moment is. Because I always know that even if I hate what I said or how I called it, I can at least feel confident that the people listening knew that I was emotionally involved in the game and not just some dude who was there for a paycheck.
Right.
No, definitely. I think I will go on to the next question, but I just wanted to follow up real quick. It's just amazing how, you're critiquing yourself. You're not satisfied, with usually your end result most of the time. It doesn't really sound like you ever are. Which is just, it's just great to know that, you definitely keep yourself humble and, you're not like, oh yeah, that was easy. No big deal. All job done.
I'm sure you guys are like this though. Don't you listen back and you're kind of like, I could have said that better. I could have made that better. Like, that's kind of like what happens, right? Like we're having a good conversation and I'm enjoying this, but I guarantee both of you guys will go back and be way harsher on yourselves than I could ever be. Like that, or anybody listening would ever be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I definitely will probably. Yeah. So it makes sense.
All right. So the next question we have is, how do you like doing the play-by-play calls for the Cali Clásicos on Univision? Is it a bit of a different experience or a challenge on a Spanish language network? Or?
So what they did for that was they did it just a couple of times where they would take our radio feed for the international broadcast, which I think was going to like 100 and some odd countries. But it was weird because I was like, they didn't like, it wasn't like synced up with the it was in real time, obviously, but like I didn't know what camera angles they were going to. I didn't know what they were doing. They're like, we're just going to take your call. And I was like, should I change it from a radio call to more like TV? I was like, because it might seem kind of nonstop for TV because you kind of lay back a bit in TV as opposed to being on top of radio. And they're like, no, don't just do what you normally do. But it was a little bit nerve wracking to be like, they're going to use this English broadcast for 100 and some odd countries around the world. Like it was very much like, okay, there's a lot of people that could potentially hear this. Like it was a little bit intimidating, but it was cool. And later on I was able to get the feed of it and watch how it sounded. And like, it didn't always sync up with what, like sometimes I'd be talking about the game and they would be showing a replay. So it would be a little bit off in regards like that, but it was just cool because it was like, there's people who are watching this game in, Ireland or wherever, and they're going to hear me doing the broadcast. Like the idea of being able to reach people in different communities and be associated with it, that's super cool. Even though if it was like a little, at times, I'm sure it seemed a little clunky, but when you get the opportunity to do something like that, you're just like, awesome, like, this is cool. But again, it was like, ooh, a lot of people are going to be listening to this. Don't screw up, Teddy. Just do it well.
Right. So yeah, that's incredible that it was broadcast to so many different countries and so many emotions flood through when that happens.
Yeah.
Pride, excitement, nervousness. So props to doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the next question is, since we're all loving about the San Jose, which team are you more of a fan of? I have this kind of same issue as well, since I'm a big Sharks fan. So who do you got? Sharks over Earthquakes, or Earthquakes over Sharks?
I will just put it right down the middle, just because I don't want to anger either fan base.
Fair
but
enough.
I will say that it is the San Jose teams and then everybody else in the Bay Area. Whereas growing up, my favorite team was the 49ers. Like that was like my biggest one. Like, because I had like a couple heroes in sports. Like I ran track. Like I wanted to be Michael Johnson. Like he was like my guy. And then like Steve Young and Jerry Rice were my two other guys who I like worshiped on the earth. So like the 49ers were that team. But then, like I said, when my dad started doing the Clash again in 1996, it was like, oh, like suddenly it was like you're associating. And my dad worked for the 49ers too as the in-stadium announcer. But like that was different. Like it was him, like when you watched a Clash game on TV, it was my dad on TV. It was like, it changed my perspective on the team. And then he stopped working for them in 1999 when he went to those Cyber Rays. But I still had that affiliation and that genuine love. And then I always, because the Sharks came in when I was 9 years old, and like there was like, it was the buzz about them. It was like right from the start, it was like there was a new team and I'm going to like be from the ground level up with them. So like it was, you have all these different competing teams, but now it is the San Jose teams and everybody else. But just to not anger either fan base, just not that I think anybody would pick a bone per se, but I don't want it to somebody be like, hey, why are you like this one more than the other? So yes, they are equal at the top.
Yeah, that makes sense. Much like how the Sharks Twitter account, that they show love to both 49ers and Raiders when the Raiders were in the Bay Area, and the A's and the Giants.
Yeah.
Even though people who happen to see the tweet of not their team but don't check the timeline are like, hey, why are you being nicer to them than my team? And it's like, dude, they tweeted for your team too. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for me personally, I view hockey in a similar way as like a lot of the USA feels about soccer, or like during the regular season or club competitions, and they maybe hear a thing here or there, and then maybe they check an ESPN notification or something. But like when the playoffs, the NHL playoffs for me are like the World Cup for general public US soccer. Like I'm all into it. Like I'm enjoying the fights, all the different like overtimes and all that. And it's like, oh man, this is so intense. Like it could be like that one game this year between, I think it was the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Tampa Bay Lightning, with that went to 4 overtimes. I think that was nuts.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I mean they played 2 1/3 games. Like it was insane. Like you get stuff like that. Yeah, it's Stanley Cup playoffs are amazing. It sucked that the Sharks weren't a part of it.
Let's not get started there. I think we could have. I'm a big Sharks fan, and like I said, I could have my own podcast and start talking about the Sharks all by myself in a rant. But let's not get started there. But I do have to say that like being at a Sharks playoff games, I've been the 10-pack season holder, for a while with me and my dad, and we've been fans since I've grown up. So hockey's been there forever. But yeah, Ivan, if you have a chance to go, I don't know if you have, to a Sharks playoff game, the atmosphere it's electric. It's one of its own. I can't explain it.
To tie it back to soccer,
right,
one of my favorite Sharks game was when it was the playoffs and the iconic Brandy Chastain opened the bench doors for the Sharks to come on out. That was so much fun.
And I want to say Wando's done it too. I don't know if he did it last year or the year before, but I know he's opened it up. Dude, it's so cool. Like, it's just fun. Like that's the thing is like, and part of that's all the fans being in the building. Like that's what sucks. Like right now, like going to Earthquake Stadium for games with the fans and being a part of everything. It's the coolest thing in the world. And same thing for the Sharks. Like it's the coolest thing in the world. And right now, like last night I broadcast that game against RSL. There's nobody there. Like it's not normal. Like it's just like, it's still awesome because you get the guys out there and they're playing their hearts out and they're working hard and the game is in front of you. But like when you don't have all the fans there and you don't have that buzz, like there are moments when you walk in and it's like electric. You can feel everybody brimming with excitement, whether it's opening day, whether it's decisioning day, whether it's a playoff game, whether it's a rivalry game. Like,
Oh yeah.
you don't have that now. Like, it's just, it sucks. You know, it's like my grand, you know, all my brain could eke out about the situation with Colorado. Like, it sucks. And I apply it the same way here.
Yeah. I get a little bit of a joy on rivalry games, texting to my friends in the group chat. It's like, oh, hey, like, are you ready for a butt whooping or something? But it's not the same as like actually being in the stadium. But it is interesting, and San Jose sports in general, like there's a lot of passion in that city, and it's in an interesting position in the Bay Area where it's the largest city in the Bay Area by population, but because San Francisco and Oakland, they're cultural centers and they're connected by the Bay Bridge, sometimes San Jose can sort of feel like the third wheel of the Bay Area of the three major cities. So this leads into the next question. How is it covering multiple sports for the Bone and KNBR? And is it a bit of a balancing act to make sure the Sharks and Earthquakes get a similar amount of love as the San Francisco and Oakland-based teams?
Yeah, I mean, like when I was at KNBR, they wanted you to talk about the Giants, the Warriors, and the 49ers first and foremost, because those three were there. Then the Warriors went to the game, and then it was the Giants and the 49ers first and foremost. They didn't really want you talking about the Sharks until it was the postseason. And they, you know, like were not really that big on doing much Quakes talk other than like, again, if it was the playoffs or something or opening day, something like that. The difference is like, and the Bone always gave me, they said, you know, Ted, whatever you want to talk about, go for it. At KCBS though, because they're an all news station, when I do sports for them, they for sure want to make sure that you mention the South Bay because they know that it's the most populous city in the Bay Area, that there's a lot of people there. There's more people there than any other city. And they know that so many of the listeners feel like they're treated like the third wheel and they care about the Sharks and they care about the Earthquakes. And it's just, you know, you have to look at it in the vein of like the teams that were here first were the 49ers and the Giants and the Warriors and the A's. And that was what a lot of the old generation grew up with. And I'm not trying to be ageist here or anything like that, but like the Quakes and the Sharks came later. And
90s.
That's part, yeah. I mean, that's the dichotomy of how it breaks down. That's the way we look at this. And so I think that you get a lot of people who just aren't that into hockey, or like there was the Seals briefly in the Bay Area for a while, but they didn't last. And then like the games that people grew up were always football, baseball, and basketball. And then even then it changed. Like I talked to my dad about this, about how there used to be a much bigger market for Cal and Stanford and San Jose State football and basketball, as well as the San Francisco schools. And that all changed when, the shift in the 70s started happening towards particularly the Warriors. And then in the NFL, it went from being more of a college town to an NFL town with the Raiders and the 49ers. And so like there's an ebb and flow. And as we see it happening now, like I said, I do think that soccer and NBA will be the eventual kings, because I think football is going to run into some trouble with insurance because of all the head injuries. And I think that's going to limit things. And that's a whole nother discussion. But I think there's also less people that want their kids playing football. But I think that's, one thing soccer has going for it. And you have all these people in the South Bay. But I do think that like, that's one of the reasons why I looked at it, and why the thing with the Sharks started. It was because like, hey, like sports talk, it wasn't covering it. And, when I was at KNBR, I was pretty much me and Ryan Covey, who's now at the game. We were the only dudes who talked about the Sharks there, really, unless it was the postseason. And Covey works for the Quakes on game day. He does social for them. Not right now during the pandemic, but Covey he's also a big soccer guy, Liverpool fan as well. But yeah, I mean,
I'm
like,
a United fan, so, but yeah, it's okay. That's okay.
But like there is that, they don't get enough talk, and it's unfortunate. And like that, listen, that's what they do. They talk about the teams that they have on the air. That's fine. And they recognize that a lot of their listening audience just wants to talk about the Giants or the Warriors or the 49ers. And like the A's And the Raiders get that treatment to the same extent as well. Like the game didn't want to talk about the A's when they were on their airwaves. And I thought that was a mistake, but that's their prerogative. But I think that you're going to see more and more of the shift just because San Jose is becoming more and more of a power. And especially I think that the pandemic is reshaping the Bay Area as they're going to be less, more people are going to be working home, not as many people driving into the city. And I think that there are people who were commuting to the city from other parts of the Bay Area who now might be more inclined to be more of a fan of the A's as opposed to the Giants, or be more of a fan of the Sharks as opposed to the 49ers. And I mean, it gets complicated too, because it's the San Francisco 49ers who play in Santa Clara County. And, it's like, well, wait a minute, like, what, so which market are we trying to get here? The San Francisco market or this, it's complicated, but, it's things change. I guess that's the best way to look at it. And I don't think that the Earthquakes and the Sharks will be third wheel status forever. And I think you see it like, how did all these Giants fans get here? Generations of Giants fans.
Mm-hmm.
My kids are inundated with Earthquakes and Sharks gear. They have, I buy them hats and shorts and shirts and sweatshirts. And that's more the norm. And it's more the norm for people today to have grown up Sharks fans, and their kids will be Sharks fans. And it's more than a norm for people to have grown up as soccer fans now, and their kids have more of the opportunity to be soccer fans and be Earthquakes fans. And so it's a process, but like I said earlier, 2010 to 2020, and you go 1994 to 2002. I mean, it's just like, you look at these differences of time, things always change. And my dad always brings it up when talking about how popular the NBA is now. He's like, Ted, the NBA finals until the late 80s were on tape delay. He's like, they were not on live. He was like, I would say scores on KCBS, and he said people would call me to complain that I ruined the game for them. And he's like, I don't care. It's my job to tell the score. Like, the game's ongoing. And like, that was, they think about that. Like, that was not that long ago. Like, that was when Magic and Larry were starting to make the NBA really blow up, and they were on tape delay. And people try to say, oh, so, like I heard, listen, I love Tom Tolbert, but he was like, soccer's never going to make it in America. He was talking about this a couple weeks ago. He's like, it's never going to be number one. That's just not how it is. And I'm like, but dude, it was tape delayed in the 80s until Magic and Michael and Larry changed the game. Like baseball used to be the unequivocal king. Now it's going to be passed in viewership by soccer in the next couple of years. Now, granted, there's Liga MX, Premier League, MLS, La Liga, Champions League, but still that means total viewership is going to soccer. It's already past hockey. And right now, baseball is only percentage points higher than soccer viewership in the United States. No one would have said that was possible 20 years ago. And if you don't believe me, there's a Gallup poll. Just search Gallup poll, soccer viewership surpasses hockey, and it'll list all this information talking about how soccer is only percentage points behind baseball now. And like, that's the thing, is like this, it's a changing dynamic. It's a changing market. It's a changing viewership idea. And so, yeah, like the NBA was not one of the top sports until it was. And dude, go back way before our time, boxing and horse racing were king. Certainly not anymore. I mean, like it changes. And I think that that's, going to happen more and more with San Jose sports. And I think people will probably pay more and more attention, because you're going to have generations of Sharks and Quakes fans, the same way you have generations, of Giants and 49ers fans. So it's, there's nothing ever stays the same, right?
Got it. So how was it like working with such a big sports personality like Damon Bruce? I know a lot of our listeners come to our podcasts and other San Jose podcasts because Damon is like allergic to MLS. He barely talks about soccer in general. I think he maybe says 4 or 5 sentences total during the entire 2018 World Cup. And like, even that must have been painful for him. So, but he's a great personality, and he does a great job at his radio station, 95 of the game.
No, Damon's a good friend, and I love him to death. But he does not give an F about soccer. Like, but here's the thing, is like, he is, I want to say he's like 45 years old. So that's 7 years older than me. And I was 13 at that first MLS game. Now I'd say like the ages of 8 to 16 are your most impressionable sports years. Like that's when you're most like that's when like the imprint is made forever. And that's why Steve Young and Michael Johnson and Jerry Rice, you go down the list of those players, like those are the guys that are like icons in my head. So like Damon was already 20-ish when that started. So like he's already beyond that, and soccer wasn't like a thing in America. But like if you're under 40, the way I kind of look at it is like you had Major League Soccer and the World Cup come about at an impressionable age, and you had the Women's World Cup in 1999 coming about in an impressionable age, and you had the EPL come about in an impressionable age. And like kids that are, like 18 years old, like, dude, I go anywhere and you see kids wearing Manchester City or United kits, or you see them wearing, Barcelona, or you see them wearing Chivas. Like that's normal. I see more Messi jerseys walking around than I do like Buster Posey. Like I don't see anybody rocking like a Giants jersey around. Like I see a lot of kids wearing soccer stuff, or they're wearing like Steph Curry. Like that's like I look like, it's like is it the Simpsons meme where it shows Principal Skinner and he says, "Could I be wrong?" No, it's the children that are wrong. It's like, no, what is the 16-year-old kid think right now? Like they're not glomming on to baseball. Like, and I'm not trying to say this to be like anything against baseball, but it's like, you look at where the things that kids have the opportunity to watch and what they're paying attention to, like soccer for a 16-year-old is huge compared to what it is for a dude who's 45, because it's been more than norm of what he's grown up with. He's been able to watch the EPL and MLS and Liga MX and things of that nature. It's more normalized. And so when you have these normalized viewing behaviors, it's going to be more of what guys pay attention to. And I mean, again, the internet and like the way it changed the entire dynamic of streaming and watching all these games and Champions League, like it's more and more a thing. So, but like Damon, again, he doesn't care. And I'm not trying to say Damon's old either. I'm just saying like there is like a clear dividing line in my eyes with my friends, because I have friends who are like 42 and they don't care. I mean, and I'm not saying there aren't soccer fans who are over 40, there clearly are, but like I see it the more I go from dudes I know that are like my age, 38, and you go down to like keep on going, like 32, 28, 25, the younger you get, the more and more soccer fans you see, because it was a normalized behavior. And actually Major League Soccer is the only league in America where the fan base is actually getting younger right now. Previously, the only one that had been doing that was the NBA, and that trend has not continued as much recently. But Major League Soccer is still the only one where the fan base is getting younger. So I think that's kind of telling about soccer marketing and soccer metrics. And actually, I think some of the Major League Soccer commercials that have been out there recently have kind of had the same aesthetic that you've seen applied to the NBA, because the NBA does everything better than every league. They have been like very much the tone setters. David Stern was on top of it. Adam Silver's on top of it. They recognized that they were putting a minority face out there, that they were, that they're a league that was composed primarily of Black players. And they said, why are we just trying to appeal to middle-aged white men and their wallets? Which, listen, that's what you want to do in sports. You want to go to the money. There's nothing wrong with that. But it was like, you have a product that is, as much as it is being sold to white-owned businesses, it was like you have Black players who represent the neighborhoods and the lifestyles of so many kids across America. And so they said, let's be that youthful league. Let's be like, yeah, we're proud. Like basketball has had no trouble getting themselves involved in the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, you saw what happened with the Donald Sterling situation. It was like all that hardcore racism came out and they're like, see ya. Like to quote Ken the Hawk Harrelson, like he gone, he was out. Like it did not take long, because they were like, we are a league that has minority players driving our talent, like Michael Jordan, like Magic Johnson, like these dudes respond and elicit reactions from kids who don't have that same, this can get into a whole different discussion of society and politics in America, but it was like, you have the minority community in America represented so beautifully in the NBA, and they went hard in on that. And they didn't try and shy away from, they didn't try and make it more palatable to, like Midwest white America. And I'm not trying to say there's anything wrong with that, but it was like, they're like, we're going to go in on this, and it worked. And that's what the NBA has done so well. And I think that's what Major League Soccer is trying to do, is like, listen, like, we're a multicultural. There's people who are Hispanic. There's people who are Black. There's people who are white. There's people who are Asian. Like, we're going to embrace the melting pot, and they're putting that out there. And that's good. And Chris Rock, who I'm a big fan of, like, he made the point of Black pop culture dictates what people find as cool. It was one of his stand-up acts. Or actually, no, he did it for HBO when talking about why baseball had such a low minority representation, specifically among the Black community. And he talked about how that's why baseball isn't as cool anymore. There aren't as many Black players. Black kids aren't attracted to it. If you don't have the Black youth market, it's not going to be considered quote unquote cool to America. And I think that's something that the NBA is totally lean on there and be like, hey, yeah, we're not this, buttoned up. It's not baseball, right? Like, the NBA is not trying to be this total, like, they're letting their players be their individuals, and they're using the aesthetic of going after the youth. And I think Major League Soccer saw what the NBA did with that. And I think they're saying we have a lot of those same aspects. And the NBA has done such a great job of being like, you don't need to be rich. You don't need to be of status. You just need to have drive, and you need to be able to get a ball in a hoop. And I think that's what baseball used to be, kind of, but somehow in America we've screwed that up and made baseball expensive. Like, I don't know how we've done that. We've kind of done that with soccer too. Like, we've made soccer expensive.
Oh my
But if
gosh,
it's like, you look at like the marketing that some of Major League Soccer is doing, is like, they are showing young people of color, because that's what represents the world game. And obviously there's tons of young people who are white as well. And I'm not trying to draw dividing lines, but they're saying we like Major League Soccer is an incredible melting pot. Like, I'm talking about dudes from Ghana. I'm talking about dudes from Chile. I'm talking about guys from South Korea. I'm talking about guys from Portugal. Like, it's incredible and it's awesome. Like, people always talk about it as like the world's game. And I don't think they understand that it's just like popular to the world. It's like, no, when I'm broadcasting a game in Major League Soccer, there are people from so many different nationalities. And I think it's amazing. Like, it blows me away that you have people from all different walks of life, all different corners of the world, multiple, like, not just like 2 languages being spoken, but like 6, 7, 8, 9, like, represented out there on the pitch. And they're all coming together for like to make this work and score a goal. Like, it's so cool. And like that, like I see with Major League Soccer is like, they've started to be like, hey, yeah, like, this isn't just one culture sport. This is everyone's sport. And you've started to see that a little bit more in their advertising when they like show, like, I think there was a Heineken ad that was a couple of years ago. They were showing people in a bunch of different kits hanging out, and they showed like people of every walk of life in it. And they were not trying to show like people of status or like people of like trying to look cool or trendy and hip or that. They were just showing like the community that's involved in soccer. And they were showing very young people. And I was like, this is smart. I was like, this is how you sell this more. The NBA showed it so successfully previously, incorporating hip hop, trying to be like more literally hip. And I've seen a little bit more of that from Major League Soccer. And I think that's the way to go with it, but it's cool. Like, I get mad at baseball a lot because I think they've done such a horrible job marketing their stars.
Rob Manfred.
Dude, like, Mike Trout could walk in like to any bar in America, and I don't think anybody would know who he is. Like, no one knows like what his face looks like. And like in Zlatan Ibrahimovic, where soccer is not the big sport here in the United States, he couldn't go around in LA because people would mob and flock to him. But like, Mike Trout walks around like anonymously. Like, I don't think Mookie Betts is getting like, nobody's like rushing him on the streets. Like,
maybe now, but like,
yeah, maybe now.
Ago.
Yeah. Like, dude, it's wild. Like, and I think that, Major League Soccer is definitely taking a page from the NBA and marketing themselves the right way. And like, you see that with everything getting younger in the fan base. It's fascinating to me. And it's the smart play. It's like, I view, and again, longer discussion into politics, social, economics, all these things. But like, I view the melting pot of Major League Soccer as such an incredible selling point. And I think it's so cool. Like, when I broadcast a game that it's literally, I'm like people from so many different countries. I'm like, this is incredible. Like, it blows my mind. And I think it's so cool. I think it's such an awesome selling point.
I joke around, and I can think of all these different settings where it's going out to a bar or restaurant to watch a game, going to play pickup soccer, or going to an Earthquakes game or any sort of soccer game in the United States, that you could take a bingo sheet and cross things off based on the clubs and national teams and jerseys that are represented at that game. And you can make a game of it because so many different leagues, so many different clubs, and like, and this is where everyone's coming from. Everyone has so many unique experiences with soccer, and that is just another unique aspect that comes to them along with their personal traits that make them who they are.
It's awesome, man. Like you said, like you see it all. Like you go to an international game, or you go to just any league game, like you see it, the world so well represented. And I think it's awesome. And it's something that I'm happy to be associated with, because it's, again, longer political discussions, but I don't like, the president right now doesn't want to denounce white supremacists, and that rubs me the wrong way. And I like being associated with something like Major League Soccer that is so willing to take a stand on things like Black Lives Matter and has such awesome inclusivity, and is representing the world and people from all walks of life. And it's pretty cool. It's just, it's something. It's like, you want to be good, you want to be associated with something that puts out a good product, but you like also the fact that you can look at this and be like, they are taking the right cues on a societal side of things and being like, we're going to stand for something that's bigger than ourselves. And I know that some fans get turned off by that, but like, I'm sorry, like there's things that are bigger than soccer that these players can use their platforms for, and I'm proud that they do so.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, no one's gonna complain here about what the MLS is doing with that. I mean, it's a great thing that they're doing. And I mean, so you've been talking about how MLS is on the rise, and for us, the question we have, I'm going to kind of rephrase it, is how do we see that it's going on the rise? How do we get more radio stations to help the climate of soccer in the United States?
I'm not sure that it's even quote unquote radio stations. I think it's more stuff like this, like podcasts. Like fans are so good at finding what they want to find, like the radio, sports talk radio is dominated by the NFL primarily, and then local market baseball, and there is some NBA in there, and then it's kind of everything else. But like, I mean, you guys do this. You're not the only Quakes podcast. You're not the only soccer podcast. Like there's a lot of people in there who have this fan interest and want to go out there and produce content, and there's a thirst for the content. And in my opinion, it's like there literally can't be enough content for anybody that's not the NFL. It's like the NFL is literally, I can't walk out the door without being told an injury report about a team. It's unbelievable. It's like, I wish I was joking, but like, it's all, I feel like it is that way. It's like, open the front door and it's just like, bam, like there, it's, that's how the NFL is. And they've done a great job of, the NFL is brilliant in making news out of everything. But like everybody who's a soccer fan in the United States, and again, I keep on making this dividing line of like above and below 40 years old, is they're internet savvy. They know how to find these podcasts. They know how to find, they know Sirius XMFC, and they go and they find what they want to listen to. And they know that it's available on Patreon. They know it's available on different podcast platforms. They know it's available on YouTube, and you have people putting out the content. And I think it's cool because you don't get as much of the, I love what ESPN is. Like I respect what they do and what they are, but it's also such a production at times. It's like, sometimes I want to listen to guys like you talk about a team. I don't want to hear about all the guests, and I don't want it to be, like, it's not contrived. It's like, I know sometimes when I'm watching Stephen A. Smith, I'm like, he doesn't believe this. He just wants to be upset about something. And that's cool because that's showbiz. And I understand, like, for the sake of an argument, I have said things that I don't agree with because I know it'll elicit reaction. That's cool. And I understand that's part of it. And everybody does that, whatever. But it's so produced at that level that it loses something. And that's because it has to be accessible to everyone. You have to have kind of not bland, but kind of like wide reaching statements so that everybody can say, I disagree with that, and tweet about it and stuff. But like, for an Earthquakes fan, I think they want to hear two guys talk about the team to have their feelings and their fandom validated. They want to see if people disagree or agree with them, and they don't want to deal with the BS that's maybe associated in some of the bigger conversations. And I think that we get that with the different podcasts that are out there with Sirius XM FC. And like, if it does become more of a talking point on radio, that's great, because I think that that'll be more of a sign of how successful soccer in America has become. And if it gets to that point, great. But I think right now there's no lack of content. Like, dudes are doing an incredible job of getting it out there. And I think that, that's the way it's got to be. Like, there's a grassroots feeling about it that I think is that people want more than the heavily produced ESPN stuff. Not again, and I totally get where that comes from, and I think they're great at it. But I think, my bad buddy complaining to me today. He's like, Terry Bradshaw just made a statement about the 49ers. He's like, he said they're getting healthy. He's like, why does he think that? He's like, the 49ers are not healthy at all. He's like, they just beat an overrated Patriots team. He's like, but they might as well have leprosy. They're not getting healthy. They just beat him. And he's like, Terry Bradshaw doesn't know anything about the 49ers. And like, he was complaining. This like, no, probably not. He's got to know a little bit about every team, and that kind of takes away. But like, you guys have an intimate, in-depth knowledge about the team, where I think somebody who's interested in the Earthquakes is going to get more out of that than if they listen to something that was going to quick hit on all the big topics in the sports world that might hit on the Earthquakes and might not. They know how to get it. But again, if we get to the point where soccer is being discussed more on sports talk radio in general, then that's all good for soccer. That just means things continue to trend in the right direction.
Yeah. So you're also one of the play-by-play commentators for the Oakland Roots. So some could say you are a voice of Bay Area sports. What impact do you think the Oakland Roots will have on the Bay Area soccer scene and of San Jose Earthquakes?
I think the Roots are doing all the good things that they can. They're really good at activating the community. I think it sucks that everything they did in their first year got kind of washed by the pandemic, because I know they were planning on doing more stuff this year. They do really good with their marketing. They have a really cool logo. They've been doing the Oaklandish style stuff. They're just good for the Bay Area, because I know that, like, also this is trying to think of the best way. Not everybody wants to drive to San Jose. So like, let's just get that out of the ordinary. Not anybody. It's just like people who live in, Santa Clara or Marin, who are 49ers fans. They don't want to drive to Levi's Stadium. And then people who live in Concord don't always want to drive to San Francisco to see a Giants game. And so like, they might end up going to an A's game, so if there are people who live in, Oakland, who don't want to go to San Jose, now they have an option to go watch some soccer, and some good soccer in their backyard. And I'm not trying to, because I know people in San Jose are like, oh, come on, man. Like, what? Like, I get it. I understand the arguments. They don't want to hear me saying that, but it's true. Like, people, like, traffic in the Bay Area, even a pandemic, is unbelievably bad. So like, if you have the Oakland Roots right there, what essentially you're doing is you're giving people an option to watch. And I think that they had a good product, and they've had a good product, and people have been enjoying it. It's just unfortunate that people can't go out the way they could and see it. And now that they're USL, I think that's going to do good things as well. And it just shows that there's more of a market for soccer. And I think that, you can be a Roots fan and an Earthquakes fan as well. And I hope they keep on, just keeping it going forward. I mean, you get worried about the long-term effects of this pandemic stuff, man. It's like these teams need these gates. I mean, everything but the NFL, in my opinion. The NFL could operate in a soundstage with their TV contracts. Every other sport in America needs people in the stands. I mean, because it's better for people and the athletes, but like, you need the money, you need the revenue, you need the money coming in. And for smaller organizations, I mean, look at what happened to minor league baseball this year. Just communities that live off that stuff. And think of all the broadcasters that were put out of work, and think about all the concession workers, and think about, I mean, in the Bay Area, we're like, oh, we have all these teams and there's people who work. It's like, yeah, but like, what about all the businesses? Like, it's the people who got put out of work at the stadiums. It's the people who own all the businesses around the stadiums, and people who work for those businesses that are, independently owned around the stadiums and stuff. Like, it's just, you hope that there's no long-term impact, that they can weather the storm, and that we can get our act together with this stuff so that we can get back to having fans in the stadium. Like, I know that the Roots have good financial backing, but like, so does everything until all the revenues stop. I mean, it sucks. These people are all being hurt by it. Fans are at sporting events for a reason.
Yeah, so Oakland Roots are going to be very interesting to see play in the USL Championship in 2021. Knock on wood. Hopefully that goes as planned. And it's going to be interesting for me personally because I am from Oakland, so I have a rooting interest in Oakland Roots. I went to college at UC Davis, so I went to Sacramento Republic games. Reno
Nice.
happened to be the USL affiliate of San Jose Earthquakes, and now I currently live in San Diego, so I have that connection to San Diego Loyals. So my USL loyalties are all over the place, but I'm so happy because having lived in all these places, I know that there's a proud soccer culture across the state of California, and we can include Nevada in there to include Reno. Then it's great. I think all these places deserve to have some level of soccer to cheer for. And the reality is, like, there is a finite level of MLS expansion. We don't know yet where it is, but they will reach it at some point. And just like in any other league system in the world, we can talk about promotion and relegation in depth another day, but the way you get more and more of these communities involved is through building a soccer system that goes multiple divisions deep. And I think the USL Championship and all the USL leagues are doing a great job these last 5 to 10 years building that foundation. And the quality of play, watching USL Championship matches on ESPN Plus has been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like you have ESPN Plus now. Like that's people didn't have the ability to watch USL stuff as widely as they did. There were independent streams of stuff, and now people can check it out. And like before games, at Earthquakes games, since ESPN Plus has had everything, like me and Joe would be watching Reno games, and like on the way back from games on the bus with the Earthquakes, a bunch of the players, we'd and myself included, we all be on our phones live streaming Reno's games or watching the playoffs or seeing what Sac Republic was doing or seeing what, Indy 11, whatever it was, we would be watching those games. And like, you have that availability. I mean, that's what the internet makes so amazing. I know there's still like a lot of trouble in totally figuring out all the ratings for the streams and live events that are on TV at the same time. But I'm like, it's available. Like there's a market for it. And now people are able to watch it and people are able to, like the minute you have more of that accessibility, you have the ability to grow a fan base. And there's no reason you can't be a fan of Reno 1868. And now that Sacramento is moving to Major League Soccer, assuming everything operates as normally going forward, is like you can be a fan of Reno 1868 and the next geographic close team is Sacramento. Even if you are the affiliate of the Earthquakes, maybe you find it's easier to take that quick flight to Sacramento out of Reno and it's less expensive than it is San Jose, whatever your reasoning is. Or maybe you do want to be an Earthquakes fan. Like it's accessible. Like that's the exact same thing you had with the EPL before, is that suddenly who had it first? Fox Sports had it, and then it went to NBC, but it was accessible in the United States and there was a market for it. And as soon as there's a market for it, and as soon as you get people paying attention to it, success begets success. More people are going to glom on. And obviously there's a relative limit for all these things, but it's still the availability, like just having the streams and the opportunity to watch these things. It makes it awesome. You didn't have that before. And that's, I think that, there was such a blockade. It was like you had the big three in North America, which are football, baseball, basketball, dominating the television. Hockey also is, the next one. And then soccer now, because there's so much availability with the internet, you have the ability to grow the fan base in a whole different way. And especially the people who were there all along now feel validated that they can watch all these streams and have this new access to it that they never did before. And it's like me, like as soon as the German soccer came back from the pandemic, I started watching more Bundesliga than I ever did before because I could go get a stream of it. I could sit there and prep for a game and put on, something on my iPad and have it on. And like, I wasn't doing that as much before, but like suddenly I could stream it and it was on. Like you have the availability and the opportunity that wasn't there before. It's awesome.
All right. Yeah. And just looking at some of the players on the Oakland Roots roster real quick, there's some familiar names there. Nana Takora, there's Nelson Blanco, a young Salvadorian, Tristan Bowen, Jack McInerney, the former MLS Super Draft first overall pick. So Oakland Roots are not messing around. They're going to try to be competitive in their first year, similar to San Diego Loyal were this
Mhm.
year. So it's going to be exciting to watch. And I think it's coming at an interesting time for Oakland with the Warriors. They're still just across the bay in San Francisco, but also the Raiders moving to Las Vegas. So maybe it can fill even a fraction of that void, and that would be great for the community.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it sucks that the war. I mean, I listen. Money talks, and that's why the
Hmm.
Warriors left, and the Raiders couldn't get anything done here with the stadium. That's why they went to Las Vegas. But like, I look at it in the viewpoint of like how much local representation there is for young kids in Oakland. It's like if you were a young kid in Oakland, if you're a young black kid in Oakland, you could point to Marshawn Lynch or you could point to
Hmm.
Steph Curry and be like that. There could be that I understand that. Like I have that immediate. Like, it's like who do you associate yourself with? And now those are gone. And like that sucks. And like especially because like there's problems of gentrification in Oakland, and there's just the squeeze on the minority community in general. It's like you having that ability to identify with these local athletes taken away, I think really sucks. And like again, I know money talks. Like we can go down that road all day and never reach a different conclusion because that's just how it is. But I think the roots offer a little bit of that. It's like you have the opportunity to see people from every walk of life right in your backyard again. Like the the community is involved, and if you give community the ability to identify and involve themselves with what you're offering on the field, because like even if we want to talk about what sport it is, it's entertainment. And
Hmm.
if a kid who is white, black, Argentinian, Indonesian, whatever it is, if he goes to an event and sees an athlete on the pitch that he identifies with and sees his community also surrounding himself and identifying and cheering with that athlete, that's only going to have a net positive, right? Like that's why I think it's crappy that, the Warriors left, because like the Warriors were so resoundingly Oakland. Like the Raiders,
Hmm.
like we can talk all day about Al Davis going to LA and then back and well, whatever. But like the Warriors were so supremely Oakland, and like that energy in the building, it was working class. You had people blue collar in there, and that's why it made it so amazing to watch them go from an absolutely adrift franchise under Chris Cohen to getting the new ownership in there and suddenly having Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and those guys all being drafted and built up in the team, and just everybody glommed onto them. And it was so real. It was so natural. And that's gone. I mean, I know it's across the bay, but like tickets are way more expensive. And it's in this shiny brand new building that's so corporatized. It's so just it's beautiful, but it's not the Coliseum Arena. It's not Oracle. It's,
Hmm.
Oracle, there was history when you walked in the building, like you knew that guys like Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan had played here, and that Steph Curry and Klay Thompson made their names here, and that, the We Believe Warriors happened there. Like that's all gone. It doesn't happen there anymore. And so for the
Hmm.
roots, there is that void now. And like, I think that it has the opportunity to have that same type of organic feel to it, because soccer is on the rise in America, and like there can be a buildup, and this offers kids the opportunity to really see the game up close and personal at an accessible, affordable level, which is what you want sports to be. I mean, that's again, I can bring up these long conversations about
Yeah.
affordability and things like that. And now, like, they're providing another option for that. They're providing kids the aspect and the ability of seeing somebody that represents their community and somebody they can go out there and identify with and go out and watch and be entertained. Like it has all those things kind of wrapped up in and of itself. And so you hope that it does grow and offer those things that have now been left, as a void, in Oakland in particular. So, I hope that they are given the opportunity that this pandemic calms down, that people can go out there and watch them do their thing. I think it's awesome.
Do you think there's a chance that the Oakland Roots could make it to that MLS, or do you think the presence of Sacramento will kind of damper that?
I think Sacramento and the Earthquakes, I think they have the two rights on quote unquote Northern California teams. Don't quote
Hmm.
me on that, but I think that's technically what it's allotted for. And obviously everything can change. But I don't think it would happen at least not anytime soon. But I mean, if you want to go long term, you would say you would love the idea of Northern California being able to put Sacramento and San Jose and an Oakland team in Major League Soccer. But then you get into the whole arguments of territorial rights and things like that, which I think are just allocated to Sacramento and San Jose right now. But it would be cool. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's like the idea of the league growing to that point where it could sustain all of that. That would ultimately that'd be good for everyone.
All right. So then now we want to talk a little bit about your show. So in your show, The Soccer Hour, do you know how many episodes that you have recorded? Because we're curious, because like as we run a podcast as well, like it's just fun to like celebrate those milestones.
Yeah, and I thought about this before. We started doing it a week before the season began in 2016, and it's been once a week ever since. So right. I think we're probably getting close to 300 episodes. Yeah. Some of a couple of them have been best ofs, usually around like Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'll put together some good interviews from the past, and kind of use that as just kind of like, okay, like this is what we're going to do this week, and just kind of use some older stuff. But which is kind of like the norm of what they do on 680 when it's the holidays, they do best of shows. But yeah, so I mean, I guess we got to be closing in on 300 shows. I don't have the exact number. What I'll do now is I'll go after every invoice I have and see how many episodes we've actually done. But yeah, I mean, we like just doing the straight math like that. It's got to be closing in on 300.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. No need to make you do all those digging, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Congratulations on the work you've done there.
Thank you. Yeah, we have fun with it. It used to be just me, and then Marv joined because he's been working for the Quakes, which is cool because like before it was me, and then I would bring on the interview guests and talk about subjects around soccer. But it's like the same thing as like with Joe on the color commentary for the broadcast. Like me as a guy who never played, there's only so much I can see, no matter how much I study, no matter how much I watch, no matter how much I try and learn. I'm limited just because Joe and Marv on the Soccer Hour, they played it. They have experience that I can never have. Like I said, unless I get that call up, seems a little bit shaky. I'm never going to know what it's like to be in the locker room. I'm never going to know what it's like to, be in a, 93rd minute trying to cross one in to Wando. Like these things that's just not, it's never going to be part of my arsenal. So with Marv on it now, like I get his perspective, and Marv's just the coolest dude in the world. And it sucks that his career got cut short by the heart issue, because he'd still be playing today and would still be one of the fastest guys in the league. And he would probably still be playing with the San Jose Earthquakes, and it would be awesome. And it's, that's life. I'm mostly happy that Marv is healthy over everything else, and that they discovered this problem before it was something entirely different. But his medical issue with his heart turned into an overall positive for me on the Soccer Hour, because now I get to talk to Marv every week and get his takes on things, and get his perspectives and his unique viewpoints, and talk to him about who he thinks is kind of a punk in the league and who isn't. So I enjoy the hell out of that, and it's fun to be able to represent soccer, give people an option on 1050. To be able to hear soccer talk and hear about US. I mean, we mainly keep it US soccer and Major League Soccer, but we do talk about some of the big stuff that's going on in Europe and international play, just because, you don't want to seem, that's what everybody's talking about. You want to talk about everything. But yeah, I mean, we have fun with it, and it's cool to be able to give people that opportunity to turn on KMBR 1050 and hear some soccer talk, hear Marvell Wynn talking about what he thinks is going on, with Atlanta, and, hear me opine about what I'm seeing on the pitch with Seattle. It's cool.
So for just me and any other of our fans that listen to our podcast, where else would they, listen to your show? Was it just strictly on, 1050?
It's on 1050 Wednesday nights at 6. It's also found on anywhere you find podcasts. KMBR puts all their shows up on the podcast network, so it's up there. Just search Soccer Hour and you'll be able to find it. And then trying to think if there's anywhere else they would find it. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can go to KMBR.com and go to I think they have a download or links section there where you can find podcasted episodes as well. But yeah, I mean, it's, it's the standard form. But yeah, I mean, that's what's cool is like, this is another thing that didn't exist before the internet is like, if you missed the soccer radio program that happened to be on in your market, like, well, you were kind of ass out of luck. You were going to be able to find it again. But now, with podcasting and the ability to go back and listen to stuff that was on the air, you have that. So again, the internet has helped soccer, I think, more than any other sport has been helped. It's at least in America, just because there were all these fans who didn't have the opportunity for it before, whereas now you get the opportunity to go and listen to something you might have missed.
Yeah, that is a great thing to have. And being from San Diego, I mean, living in San Diego now, I do miss a lot of the radio stations and shows that I've listened to in the Bay Area. So I enjoy perusing those websites and finding those shows and everything there, and still feeling connected, as well as still following my favorite hosts on Twitter too. So
where do you live in San Diego?
So I live in this neighborhood called Scripps Ranch. It's on the northeast corner of San Diego, on the border of San Diego and Poway. Yeah,
I was about to say that's out in Poway because I think Marv went to Poway High, and I lived in San Diego for a while from 2002 to 2005. I lived in La Jolla and Linda Vista, and my spot for the California burrito, because I know this is every California wants to talk about their California burrito favorite. I used to go to the Santanas off of SeaWorld in Tecolote off the 5. Like that to me is like my benchmark for a California burrito. I will always consider Santana's to have the best. Do you have a burrito?
Oh yeah. There's this Mexican restaurant that's maybe a 2 to 3 minute drive. It's called El Patron, and their California burritos are amazing too. And I'm sure there's dozens of others in San Diego that I will love to enjoy. Some I already have. I've been here a bit over a year, so still need a little bit more time to explore a few different nooks and crannies of this beautiful city, but once it's safe to do so, a bit more.
Nice, yeah.
Speaking of Marvel Win, so you recently added Marvel Win to the show, and we're gonna have him on the podcast soon. And we want to know a little bit more about how that came to fruition, who reached out to who first, and how that came to be.
He was doing work for the franchise after his playing days ended, and I think they wanted to use him in as many capacities as they could, because they've had him do other pregame stuff. They've had him do social media stuff. And I think they knew that he wanted to do some broadcasting stuff. And they said, we have Ted Weekly do this, soccer show for us on 1050. And so they said, Ted, do you want to have Marv on with you? And I was like, yeah, sure. I was like, somebody, because you can only, like, there's a reason why there aren't that many solo shows left in sports radio. It's all gone into partnerships. It's like, like on 1050 with my regular talk show, I did that for 3.5 years, just like every day talking to myself mostly. And like, you can only do so much with yourself, because like you get into this weird stream of consciousness where you're disagreeing and agreeing with yourself to try and juxtapose ideas and explain yourself. Whereas like Marv and I can just straight up debate something, and you can bring your kind of point of view a little bit more clearly and succinctly to get him to bounce it back and agree or disagree. And you can kind of, riff on each other and make fun and do all those things. Whereas like, you can't do that when you're by yourself. So yeah, it's, I love having Marv on with me, and like, I can talk forever, whatever, but having Marv specifically there with him, it makes it just a little bit more, I think, engaging overall. And for the listeners, I think that I probably represent more of them, because like I alluded to before, I'm never going to be able to have the perspectives that Marv has, but I can bring the same perspective that a lot of the listeners have, where is like, you're saying, why did this happen? Why did he do this? What was the thinking here? And Marv can give his athlete's perspective on what I see as more of having the, the outsider's perspective, because I was never a professional athlete.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think having that mix of perspectives definitely helps. And just having that second person too can make some of those tough moments when you're doing a radio show or a podcast go away. And I learned this from experience when I first started the TectonicTakes podcast. The first couple of shows were just me before Favi came on board, and then Will joined us too. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just like when it's by yourself, it's like it's not the most natural way of talking.
Yeah.
It's like, you're like, oh, okay. How do I, like, you try to run into yourself a little bit much. So yeah, but Marv's the man. Like, he's such a nice guy. And again, like I will forever be bummed. I mean, it worked out well for me that I have a partner now with Marv on the show, but like, just the fact that his career got shut by like a heart thing out of the blue, like it just sucks. Like, Marv should still be playing. He's 34. Like, he's still in great shape. Like, he still has, I think, the desire. And like he said, he was super down about it for a while, and he was depressed after it happened, and he worked through that. And he's a great dude and just worked his ass off, and he deserved the opportunity to go out on his own terms, and he was denied that. Which, you feel for the guy, because nobody ever knows when, like, when it's going to be their last time of doing everything. Like, we often assume that we'll get the opportunity to know when it's going to be the end. And, Marv didn't have the opportunity to officially retire. And this is a guy who, represented the United States at the Olympics, represented the United States at the international level for soccer competition, was, one of the shut down right backs and occasionally center backs and occasionally defensive midfielders. He was a guy that was a reliable, just good player in Major League Soccer. And then suddenly it was over. Suddenly it went from being like, hey, let's get ready for the 2017 season, to we found an abnormality with your heart, to you're in open heart surgery. Like, it's a guy, I'm sure he felt invulnerable going into that. He was like, he's like, I'm in the shape of my life, getting better with age, ready for this season. And then boom, suddenly it all comes to an end. And, like I said, it worked out well for me, but there's always going to be a part of me that just hurts for Marv, because he's such a good person, and he deserved to have the opportunity to go out on the way he wanted to go, which, like I said, he'd still be playing today, I'm positive, were it not for this heart thing that came out of the blue.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten to learn how, like, you are a very busy man. And I mean, has any of this kind of all been on, you have to do multiple things all in one day, or have you kind of just planned it out best that,
No, I mean, like, there have been days where literally I have, like, I'm trying to think what was a recent example. Before the pandemic, there was a day that I did morning sports at KCBS. So I was at KCBS from 5 a.m. to about 11:30, got home, recorded the soccer hour with Marv, emailed it over to the people at KMBR, drove to the Earthquakes to do the game. And then concurrently, the Sharks were going on, and I had to get notes from my buddy because it was during the playoffs, and we were doing a morning tide every day. Usually during the season, morning tides once a week. Playoffs, it's after every game. So I had my buddy take notes because I only got to see the third period. So then I had to go and record morning tide as soon as the Earthquakes game ended. And it was like literally from like 5, I got to KMBR at 5 a.m. to KCBS at 5 a.m., which may not have been up for a while at that point. So like the day literally started probably out of bed at like 2:30 and then got home at like 1 a.m. Like there are days that are like that are just crazy. But like, I always, like, 4 days that are crazy like that, I'm like, I'm getting paid to talk about sports. Like, it's really, really fun. Like, it's not everybody wants to do it because it's like, my friends look at me like, dude, I know you're getting paid to talk about sports, but that's absolutely insane. I'm like, yeah, it's a little harsh. There was some coffee involved, but it's fun. Like, you get to do things that you love, and with it is some craziness, and broadcasting is an inherently wild industry where you can get, fired at a moment's notice for something that has nothing to do with you. And that's just how it goes. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, there are days like that are really long and you do multiple different jobs. But again, it's talking about sports and going and getting the opportunity to perform and do these things that you really enjoy. And, it's part of the territory. It's hard, it's long, but dude, it's super It's super fun. Like it's worth the sleep that comes hard and fast as soon as your head hits the pillow when you get home.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like an incredible experience. We're glad to be a part of this community in the podcast realm, and who knows what the future might hold. But where are some of the other podcasts you enjoy listening to? You can include soccer podcasts, you can include sports podcasts, or maybe there's some other genre that you really enjoy and you'd like to share.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to Extra Time, the official MLS podcast, because I always want to get the national perspective. And unlike a lot of national perspectives, the guys on MLSsoccer.com really, really know their stuff. Matt Doyle, Andrew Wiebe, Kalen Carr, David Goss, like all those guys, they're really, really good. I really enjoy their takes. Susanna Collins as well. They know all their stuff inside and out, and I really enjoy what they do. I listen to Sirius XM FC. I know that's not a podcast per se, but I'm good friends with Brian Dunseth, of course, who's one of the two co-hosts of Counterattack, and he does the RSL TV for their color announcing. He does some color for ESPN and Fox Sports sometimes as well. But I listen to that, and I also listen to Jason Davis's United States of Soccer on that. I listen to Men in Blazers sometimes. I listen to ESPN FC sometimes. I trying to think what other soccer podcasts do I listen to. I mean, I learned about your guys' podcast through Reddit because I'm on the subreddit for the San Jose Earthquakes. I'm always lurking. I don't post a whole lot because I worry people think that I'm just going to be a shill, but that's how I learned about you guys initially. I've listened to, trying to think, Black and Azul, which is another, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention a rival podcast on here.
Oh,
no, it's okay. I watch those podcasts too, so that's totally fine.
But like, that's the thing is we need more of this stuff in the soccer community because like I said, with the NFL, you can't walk out the door without having something like, did you hear about the bowel movement Tom Brady had this morning? It's like, bro, like I just woke up. But that's how it is, man. Like, and so I want soccer to be like that. I want Major League Soccer to be at that level where I'm like, it's unavoidable. So like you like, for me, my perspective is like, yeah, it's like 1 hour a week of the soccer hour is not enough. Then it's on you guys, and then it's on Black and Azul, and then it's on all the other dudes who are out there doing podcasts and other multimedia ventures. Like it's awesome. Like we need it. Like, and I love it. But like that's, so those are like the ones that I listed are my main soccer ones. And then outside of soccer, because I'm a white male in my 30s, I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. I don't agree with a lot of Joe Rogan's takes, but he's very entertaining in his guests. I don't know if you guys saw the one he did yesterday with the conspiracy theorist Alex Jones.
Ooh, check that out.
it's so insane and crazy, but like it's hilarious. So I listen to that because he has people on. And I listen to a lot of the NPR stuff, This American Life, WNYC Radio Lab. I've been listening to the Rich White Parents podcast that they put out, which is about public schools in New York. I've been trying to, what's some of that? Like whenever there's a good true crime podcast, I'll listen to that. My favorite one was the Monster one that I think that was a Wondery production that they did on the Atlanta child murderers. And they've also done one on the Zodiac Killer. And they also did one on the DC Sniper. That's a good series. The TED Radio Hour is good, and that's not just an egotistical thing. That's a little TED Talks thing. But yeah, I mean, like, thing is, like, growing up with a dad who was in radio, like, I've always been all about the auditory medium and being able to listen to stuff. So, like, I driving to San Francisco and San Jose and Oakland and getting everywhere around, like, I'm listening to a lot of the radio stations. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm listening to Sirius. So I try to take a lot in and keep well-versed and keep aware of everything that's going on and not just get stuck in sports. I mean, most of my listening is sports just because that's what I do. And I want to hear other people have, and like, it serves as prep in a way. Like it's super cool that I can go and like drive to a game and listen to a podcast about the Colorado Rapids. Like that wasn't a thing 15 years ago. Like nobody was doing a rapid. I mean, it's possible. I don't think they were, but like that was not around. So now like I have that opportunity of been like, I can do all the research in the world, but because I'm not a Rapids fan or media member, there's just going to be stuff that I inherently might not be aware of. So if I go find a podcast, then I'm going to be made aware of it, because the media journalist and the fan aspect of that's involved in all of that, like I'm going to learn something that I didn't know. So it's cool. Like you get, that's like the great thing about podcasts is that now they offer so much more than what just traditional sports talk radio offered before. Do you guys think there's any, other than your own program, obviously, is there anything I should be listening to that you guys are currently in on?
I think one that we've had guests on before is Quakes After 90. I mean,
Oh,
for
yeah.
another one. I mean, I figured you probably heard of them. I mean, you just named like 1,000 podcasts. I mean, I don't know if we have any more to add on after that. But I don't know, Ivan. You think of anyone on top of the head that after he didn't name after?
So a lot in the realms of soccer, I think we covered like the Quakes ones for sure. There might be a few others, and they're good too, because the Quakes community as a whole is so knowledgeable about the sport. So definitely check out as many as you can. In terms of soccer, I listened to Alexi Lawless's podcast. I think he's an interesting person. He's one of those people where like you either agree or disagree with him on most things. Like there's very little like in between, but like he does offer a really valid perspective. And in some other genres of podcasts I listen to, like my introduction to podcasts was through reality TV, such as Survivor and Big Brother. Rob Has a Podcast is the main one that I listen to. That's the podcast where I really like listened to almost every podcast that came out in some points like during college and stuff. So yeah, it's a great big world out there when it comes to podcasts. So nice. We're glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a super cool medium. And I think more of traditional radio probably should be learning about what podcasting has been doing. But again, that's another long-winded discussion for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, aside from like the U.S. and San Jose related soccer stuff that obviously we've been talking about, and like I know we mentioned some other leagues, but is there any other ones you really actually just key and follow on that you really pay attention to, other than these ones?
I try to pay attention to the EPL, but it's hard because like when a lot of people are watching those games, I might have other stuff going on, like like having to do the sports reporting for KCBS is like I'm trying to pay attention to the Giants and A's and Niners and Warriors and Quakes and Sharks. But like I keep up on the EPL and I try and keep aware of like Champions League stuff. But like if I had more, I would make sure I was more in on La Liga as well, because that, the super teams in that league are just unbelievable. And like I said, I really enjoyed when I was getting into the German league when they were the first team back from coronavirus, and then Major League Soccer started coming back, and that kind of started taking all my attention away. But yeah, I mean, like, and I'd like to get more into Liga MX as well, just because it's our neighbor and they have a lot of good teams, like what Monterrey has become, what Chivas has historically been. It's just like there's a lot of cool storylines that we associate with them. But yeah, I mean, like mainly I stick with MLS and US soccer and the international stuff, but like the next closest one would be the EPL for me, just because it's so readily available. And like I said, on the weekends, on the morning, I can get up and I can, have my coffee and watch that and get ready with it. And the great thing is when we're on the road on the East Coast, it's actually on at a reasonable time. It's, it's like, that's the thing about living in California is you're like, all right, it's 5:30. I'm going to drink my coffee and watch this. And it's like, it's a little bit different when it's like 9 o'clock in the morning and you're like, oh, I'm, more naturally awake now. And I'm watching, Everton. This is a bit more normal. So, but yeah, I mean, the EPL would be the next closest one that I keep the closest tabs on. Speaking of Everton, I don't know if anybody had them, kind of shooting out of the gate like this, but there's a long way to go. So we'll see what it has to bring. And also about Leicester being up there once again. That was the coolest story in like 50 years, a couple years ago when they won the league title, riding the exploits of Jamie Vardy at that point. But it'll be cool to see where this all goes. And then Marv, like Ryan Covey, is a big Liverpool fan. So, there might be some texting during the year, that's antagonistic towards them. And not that I'm particularly anti-Liverpool. I'm just into giving Marv and Ryan Covey a hard time sometimes.
Yeah, so for me, the three leagues that I follow the most, the ones that I have a club that I root for the most being, so Liga MX is a Chivas fan. My family came from the state of Jalisco in Mexico, and Chivas were a huge deal. They're essentially like, that's their Lakers. Like, it's an incredible team. And then obviously growing up in the Bay Area, I grew in attachment to San Jose Earthquakes. And then Manchester United were just one of the first few teams in Europe that I heard of. And then I started watching them, and it was incredible. And I enjoyed following them ever since. And then like the tier two leagues that I follow are the leagues like the Bundesliga, La Liga, Serie A, Liga 1, a little bit of Eredivisie. And then here and there, I enjoy popping in at the USL Championship. I started following that a bit more as here in the Beautiful Game Network, that the majority of the podcasts are USL based, and there's a few of us MLS, but it's very much USL as well. And sometimes I find myself checking the league tables of so many random leagues. Like, I'll check J League, I'll check Australian A League. I think the next evolution for like ESPN and other sports apps, I think, along with score updates and notifications, I think maybe once a week to have the option to get a table notification. Yeah. Because even for some of the leagues that maybe don't broadcast as regularly in the United States, like the EFL Championship, for example, like that would be a great way to be a reminder, West Brom look like they're going to promote or something,
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. That's I kind of wish it was. I mean, I think like everybody saw Leeds coming, but because we thought it would happen previously, I think.
Yeah.
But like that's a really good idea. Actually, you should sell that to ESPN or Yahoo Sports.
We'll see. I'll
I have a push alert idea for you.
Yeah, we'll see if they go for it, but yeah. Anything else you'd like the listeners to know before we get into a couple of fan questions?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, just I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've covered a lot of stuff. I'm probably missing something entirely obvious because I suffer from male pattern blindness, where you just miss the glaring issue that you should be addressing. But no, I mean, just join, follow me on social media at Ted Ramey Media. That's for my Twitter handle. That's where I do most of my activity anyway. And, I try to keep people abreast of stuff going on with the Quakes, broadcast links, anything I do with the Quakes, that's where I pump it all and make sure people are aware of it. But, the other thing would just be for people to know that, how much fun I have doing, the Earthquakes and the Sharks and working for those two teams and being able to, represent them. Like it's a blast. Like I get a kick out of it. Like I've been able to travel all over North America with the San Jose Earthquakes. Like that's an incredible thing. And I always tell people that the first time it really hit me how cool it was. Like I knew it was like when I got hired by the Earthquakes in 2014, I knew it was amazing. I was like, this is the type of thing that you dream about. But we were in Portland and we were taking a picture of, you remember it was the epicenter of soccer campaign they were doing, like how many miles you were from where the new stadium would be. And I was sitting there doing a photo shoot, and all of the Timbers Army started booing me. And I was like, oh, they hate me because I'm an Earthquake. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I was like, they don't hate me. They hate me that I am representing this Earthquakes laundry. And I thought that was the greatest thing ever. And that's how I became obsessed with going into visiting stadiums. And I'm like, this is enemy territory. They don't like us here. And that makes me like it even more. So like, that was like really what made it hammer home of what a cool opportunity it is. And it's something that I don't take lightly, and that I really try to make the most out of with not just every passing game broadcast, but every passing day. I always want it to be, the soccer hour to be better, the game broadcast to be better, just to, have an awesome time with it and make sure that anybody who tunes in is having an awesome time with it as well.
Right. That's incredible. So the first fan question comes from Ricardo Carrillo from Facebook, asks, what do you think is going to happen for the next 3 years for the Earthquakes? And do we have the right coach for this era in MLS?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of going long term, I think you're just going to see more of a production of the system that Matias Almeida is trying to do. He's going to acquire more of the players that he sees fitting his system. And I think that he is trending in the right direction. It looks like the Earthquakes are going to get into the playoffs this year. And that's knock on wood, but it looks like that's the way it's going. And if that's what it is, that's first year of Matias Almeida was an improvement over 2018. This year would ostensibly be an improvement over what 2019 was if they make the playoffs. Another year of his system, you would hope that it yields even greater results and that it keeps trending in that direction. I think Matias Almeida is the right coach. I know a lot of people are very tactical or very critical of his tactics. And listen, there's an argument for and against him every day of the week for every coach in the world. We can talk Pep, we can talk, Matias Almeida, we can talk whoever's tactics you want to get into. There's going to be people who are for him and who are against him. But I think what the Earthquakes put on the pitch is entertaining first and foremost. But I like what Matias Almeida is doing, and he cares. And I think he is the right coach for this moment in Major League Soccer. And I think that he's going to help the Earthquakes continue to get quality players and build quality players. Because think about Cade Cowell. Like, if the rumors about Barcelona are true, they probably are even that much more intrigued because they're saying that he's already getting this backbone from Matias Almeida, a guy who is notorious for making his teams get in insanely good shape. And they're saying he's already getting developed to the point where he's scoring and getting assists on at a league as good as Major League Soccer. I'm sure Barcelona's licking their chops because Matias Almeida's pedigree is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's exciting times. I think it's really hard to tell, especially in MLS, like, oh, this team is going to win this championship in a year or 5 years or whatever, because there's so many moving parts. This is a very transitional league where players are coming and going for various reasons, and teams can rise and fall very quickly. So I think right now, the way things are trending, I would say that the Quakes have the foundation to become a consistent playoff team, and then you go from there.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you want to hope for. The consistency first. I mean, look at the Sounders. They just made their 12th straight playoffs, and they have every year since they've been in the league. So,
right.
That's quite a benchmark, but that's what you want to be. So let's try and be that.
They made a few shockwaves with that tweet. It's like, we're not going to put an X in our name. We don't care about qualifying for the playoffs. We expect that. So we're just that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've earned that. I mean, that's the way that's the way it goes. But good for them. I mean, right? I mean,
yeah, you gotta tip your hat.
Yeah. Another fan question that we have is from Kevin Portillo from Facebook. Asks, how likely would Fisher cash out for Fierro and for JG Macias?
I saw the Macias rumors on Reddit. I have no idea. And I think they look at Carlos Fierro as a player who's still coming into his own with the Earthquakes. So I don't know if that discussion is being had. It's really hard for me to gauge questions like that. I just know that I think the Earthquakes will figure out with Matias Almeida and Jesse Fiorinelli. I think they have a really good working relationship. Like when I've been on the road, I see that, Matias and Jesse are, out walking around, having coffee, eating together, doing their things. It's a really good working relationship. I just think the two of them will figure out what's best for the team. I think that if they feel that it's, if something's a good fit, I think they'll do it. But I think that there's been a lot of, thoughts on Fierro that he hasn't been as what people were kind of hoping for, but lately he's coming into his own and he's been more productive, in the recent history than Vako has. Vako is kind of quieted down and then he left for his international duty, and suddenly Fierro has been scoring goals and adding up some assists. So you like to see it. I can't give a definitive answer on that because I don't know, but I think that they will do whatever they feel is best for the team.
Yeah, our fans here on the podcast, they love to throw some curveballs with these questions, and we appreciate it. It's a challenge for sure, and we'd like to give you the best possible answers, but sometimes it's easier said than done. But thank you guys so much, Ricardo and Kevin, for that. On the topic of Vako, real quick, I definitely want to wish him and Georgia the best of luck, because we'd love to see San Jose Earthquakes players in the Euros next year, and they just need to overcome one more hurdle in North Macedonia to do that.
Yeah, Vako's a good player, man. Like he's just, it comes in droves for him. It's like suddenly it's there and then he'll quiet down and it'll come back. And the one thing that I really appreciate is because a lot of people used to criticize him for his defensive effort or lack thereof, but under Matias Almeida, his defensive effort has been really, really good. So, you know, like I think that what fans used to complain about is kind of toned down a little bit. Sometimes he misses some open players, but his work rate is really much higher than it was previously. And you know, he's good. I think that it's streaky with him. I think that's what the part of where the frustration with Vako stems.
Yeah. And I do want to leave you with this. So I did check this. So if you want to be like me and look to FIFA 21 for some inspiration, so the oldest player in that game is Kazuyoshi Miura, King Kazu. He's 53 years old, and he plays for Yokohama FC in the J League. So your window is possibly bigger than you might think. So.
Yes, that's the important But here's the thing. I'll tell you guys the game that I've been playing ever since I started working with the Earthquakes. Game notes come out. I look and I see on the other roster who's older than me. And like, I think Beckerman is one of like 2 or 3 guys left in the league. And like Beckerman's only the immediate name I can think of. And it's just like, oh, I'm getting old. Like it's like Beckerman. He's like April of 92 and I'm April of 82 and I'm July of 82. And Wando's January of 83. And it used to be a lot more. There was a lot more dudes who were in the league and who were older than me. And like, it just gets less and less with each year. And I'm like, oh no, 40's coming. It's like, it's just, but I get a laugh out of it. But yeah, I mean, then Ramondo, when he announced his retirement, I was like, well, there's a big one. He was well over 40.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's definitely something that I was thinking about with RSL. Playing against them in the Western Conference in this season for the first time, not with Nick Raimondo, is a big deal. So yeah. And
how about this? Beckerman played for a Miami franchise, saw them collapse, and now would have had this year kind of not gone and haywire with the virus. He would have played the new Miami franchise.
Yeah, Miami Fusion was his initial team there, and then now we got Inter Miami. Yeah, he should have never cut his hair.
I know, dude. He looked so good with the dreadlocks. It's just like, come on. Also, for me, selfishly, as a play-by-play announcer, it was like, oh, this is completely easy for me to identify. And then he looked like everybody else out there on the pitch. It's like same thing when Nat Borchers retired. And then my next fear is that Lalas Abubakar is going to shave his head. I'm like, bro, come on.
Oh man, Lalas Abubakar's hair is great. Like,
it's unreal.
He has that. Lalas Abubakar has the Robbie Anderson, the wide receiver for the Panthers haircut. It's so great, and he doesn't have to hide it in a helmet. So
no.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Ted, for your time. This is a great conversation. We touched on so many different topics, and that was a joy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, I mean, like I said, anybody wants to talk Quakes, I'm like, yeah, these are people that are near and dear to me, and I'm always down to talk about the Quakes. I think the work that you guys are doing is awesome, and it's all part of the greater good for the game and for the league and for the sport, and it's awesome, man. And like, I appreciate it very much, and the fans want it. I think that's the most important thing, is like, there is the audience there that previously was not being met, and you guys are taking part and giving people what they want, and more talk about the Quakes and Major League Soccer. And I respect the hell out of you guys for doing that. And thank you very much for having me on. Anybody that wants to put up with me for a couple hours, there's like my wife and like no one else. So I give you guys props.
All right.
Yeah. Appreciate all your time. I really do.
No problem. You guys be good. Reach out anytime. Go Quakes.
Yeah, we'll do. Go Quakes. Have a good night.
See ya.
See ya. All right. So we want to thank our sponsor once again, Roughneck Scarves, official scarf supplier to MLS, USL, and US Soccer. Get custom scarves so your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. And also, tired of the same old uniforms and cookie cutter templates from Nike and Adidas? Looking for unique, completely custom kit for your youth club, Sunday league squad, adult, or even pro team? Icarus FC can help you create the kit of your dreams at an affordable price. Let them help you design your new custom kit today at IcarusFC.com. And we are still open to suggestions if you want to see a TectonicTakes kit, and we'll share it on social media, and we'll support Icarus, or not Icarus, IcarusFC.com. For you Smash Bros fans out there, you probably know why I made that mistake. But that was a great podcast, Will. It was a lot of fun, and the time flew by.
Time definitely flew by. Ted had so much to say. I mean, it was awesome to listen to him and all his things from his beginning to everything. It was great. And I mean, it was a long time, but it was a good time.
Yeah, he's the type of person that I think he's a jack of all trades. He could do so many things well, but I think he's at the right place for him at KMBR and all the other shows he does. He puts his heart and soul into everything he does, and he's an inspiration for us here.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so we'll just remind the listeners what we got coming up. We have another recording coming up. We're going to cover the Real Salt Lake game where the Quakes won and took a crucial step closer to the playoffs, and was still going to be a bumpy ride to determine how it all shakes out in the end. Then the following week, we're going to have Marvell Wynn on the podcast, and we're going to interview him. If he's anything like Ted Ramey mentioned him, that it's going to be another fun one too. And then we'll also be covering the remaining MLS games as well, against LAFC at home and Seattle Sounders away. And hopefully after that, we'll have more Quakes to talk about with the playoffs in mind. But for now, that's all from us here at Tectonic Takes. Thank you again, Will, for your work.
Of course. Thank you. And let's go Quakes.
Go Quakes. Yeah. Let's see. Stuff, yeah. Nope, that's not it. Recording. Stop.